Good evening and welcome to tonight's full council meeting. So, agenda item 1, announcements by the Mayor and Chief Exec. I have a few announcements to make as we have some officers that will be leaving us, some to go on to other roles and some to hopefully be able to retire and relax. So I just want to start off firstly by just mentioning Richard Parry, who has been our Executive Director for Adults and Health for just over, or almost, 10 years. Richard will be leaving the organisation to work at the LGA and take on roles with other bodies and organisations. So I just want to take this opportunity, Richard, to thank you for your decade of service to the Kirklees Council, and also to wish you luck for everything that you have planned for the future. Also, Michelle Cross, I don't think she's here tonight, but she will be taking over from Richard's position as Executive Director for Adults and Health from the 18th of January. December, right, sorry, it says January there. Yeah, December, thank you. Also, Richard Farnhill, who has worked as the Council's business manager for longer than I have been alive, is retiring. And as is Naz Parker. So I want to thank them both for their years of service and commitment to the council, and I also want to wish them both the best of luck in the future. Okay. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have apologies from Councillors David Hall and Mark Thompson. Thank you.
Councillor Sokol.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Apology from Councillor Gwenlow. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Darwan.
Mayor, an apology from Mr. Dadger. He's not well.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, Councillor Munro.
Mayor, thank you. Councillor Kath Pinnock.
Thank you. And Councillor Allison.
Apologies from Councillor Alex Vickers.
Thank you. Okay. Agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the meeting of Council held on the 13th of November 2024 be approved as a correct record. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smage. Declaration of interests. Members who have any disclosable pecuniary interests which would prevent them from discussing or voting on any item should disclose their interests now. Are there any interests to declare? Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to say, as someone who did receive the winter fuel allowance and no longer does, but it could be seen as a potential interest, so I wish to declare that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pattison.
Sorry, similarly, I would wish to declare an interest on the motion.
Councillor Sokol.
Mayor, it's the same item on winter fuel payment. Yeah,
Thank you. Councillor Armour.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As a disqualified former recipient of winter fuel allowance, I have an interest in items 13 and 16.
Thank you. Councillor Firth.
For me, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Longstaff.
For me, Madam Mayor.
And Councillor Sewell.
Same for me, Councillor. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I remind any members who have declared an interest to complete the form and submit it to the clerk by the end of the meeting, or if anyone hasn't yet and thinks they may have an interest at some point, just make sure that you submit the form and it's handed in to Sam. Thank you. Agenda item 5, petitions from members of the council. Are there any petitions? Councillor Yusra Hussain.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a petition here today submitted on behalf of Community Alliance for the residents of North Kirklees. There is a desperate need for burial spaces in Dewsbury and Batley, and today I present with you over 3,000 signatures and ask for this to be debated in full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. Are there any other petitions? Okay, so in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 9.3, I direct that the subject matter of the petition be referred to the appropriate Executive Director for investigation. Thank you. Agenda item 6, deputations and petitions from members of the public. There are no deputations this evening, but there is one public petition, and I understand Sarah Blackborough is here to present that. Sarah, you have a minute to present your petition, and then you can just hand it in. Thank you.
My name's Sarah. I'm part of the campaign group to prevent the privatisation of the Kirklees Specialist Dementia Care Homes, because my lovely mum Janet lives at Castle Grange, and we're hoping to protect her place there. Privatisation could result, and will most probably result, in lower standards of care of our loved ones, increased fees, eviction of our loved ones, resulting in deterioration, and in the worst case scenario, end of life. We are trying to prevent this, and we have had a petition, and there are over, 9,433 signatures on that petition. So what that tells us is that this is not just an issue for the current residents, it's not just an issue that's important to the families and friends of those residents and staff, but it is a Kirklees-wide issue that residents across Kirklees are saying, no, this is not appropriate, this is not the way forward for these vulnerable people, and that these people deserve a good quality of life and to be left in peace where they are cared for with respect and dignity. I plead with you to listen to the residents of Kirklees and hear that they say no to privatisation of these homes. We hope that this petition will spark a debate in full council so that these issues can be heard and can be given the time and the consideration they deserve, because the result yesterday was flawed and was not something that really was based on good information. So we really hope that the debate can help us all to make the best decision for the residents of Kirklees.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Again, in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 9.3, I direct that the subject matter of the petition be referred to the appropriate Executive Director for investigation. Agenda item 7, public question time. There are no public questions this evening. We will move on to agenda item 8, which is written questions to the leader, cabinet members, chairs of committees and nominated spokespersons. So a written schedule of submitted questions and responses to those questions has been circulated. So I will now invite members to ask any supplementary questions in turn. So the appropriate member will then be able to respond. So it's one supplementary question to each submitted question. Okay, so are there any supplementaries? Councillor Greaves.
Thank you. So, in response to my question regarding changes to the recycling centres, the response avoids mention of the long queues or the increase in fly tipping away from the front door of the tips. But now we've got the proposal to shrink the grey bins. Why isn't the whole focus on driving through recycling rates across the whole of Kirklees, in particular in North Kirklees, where there's been a long-standing problem in low rates of recycling? Why isn't the focus on getting everybody's recycling up to an acceptable level? It's the elephant in the room. Why won't you take it on?
Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. As you're all aware, following the closure of the recycling unit at Nab Lane in Birstall and the reduced opening hours for the two sites, this has created no significant change in the overall sites and the recycling site services provided by Kirklees Council, or any increased levels of fly tipping in the area. So each site has one sign that has been displayed, and the opening hours have been there as well, so which has been updated and corrected. However, there was an issue with the Meltham site, and because there was two signs, and those were dealt with fairly quickly and corrected. The highways team have also been making regular site visits to all the sites, which includes NAB site, pre, post, during and afterwards as well. So those have been twice weekly visits to those to ensure that the residents' concerns and any other concerns have been dealt with. And I can confirm that we've not been receiving anything which has been adverse to that effect in terms of queues, fly tippings, which have been abnormal. And I can also confirm that the Environment Agency made an unannounced visit at the sites, not just Nab Lane, but all the other sites. And they were satisfied that all the measures have been put in place which are satisfactory according to the council. So most of the issues in terms of the concerns which were raised at the call-in, at the scrutiny, and detailed analysis in terms of all the details have been dealt with. And we have had external validation from the Environment Agency to indicate that they are satisfied with the arrangements that Kirklees Council has made.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Greaves, have you got another supplementary?
Mayor, that was a repeat of the answer to my original question, rather than a response to the supplementary question. My supplementary question was in respect of poor recycling rates in North Kirklees and why the council isn't tackling that. Nearly everything that was just said then is in that original reply.
Councillor Ahmed, was that your response to the supplementary?
As opposed to an answer.
I think I have answered it. The recycling issue is not just North Kirklees or South Kirklees. This is a general issue with the whole of Kirklees Council, and we are doing everything that we can to ensure that there are recycling strategies and procedures and guidances in place to ensure that we have. And we monitor those, and we will report to any of the adverse issues that may happen in terms of any of the locations. But as far as I'm concerned, we're satisfied with the arrangements that are in place.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Greaves, question 2. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do, thank you. So this is in relation to the sale of the former council buildings in Home Firth. Does it really take so long to put an unused and wanted building up for sale? During the 8 wasted years of neglect and decay, that building's done nothing to help with the regeneration of Home Firth, but it has cost ratepayers tens of thousands of pounds in costs and lost interest to have it mothballed. Why did you choose to waste ratepayers' money for years when it should have been sold back in 2018?
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. It sometimes takes a little while to sell some of these buildings, plus the fact we had to do a full asset strategy and building strategy, which was only published earlier this year, so it formed part of that process. So we have to declare it surplus and then we can dispose of it.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Greaves, question 3. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. So this is in respect of Section 106 contributions, where the Cabinet member response indicated everything was satisfactory. The annual Section 106 report has just been released, and that presents facts and hard numbers that offers a very different picture to the response given by the Cabinet member that everything is fine. At a time of endless cuts and council tax rises, this council sits on a cash pile of over £10 million in unallocated developer contributions. As of March 2024, that sum was £10,332,792. It's even higher now. Every year it increases. The truth is, there's been no real progress in getting this money out into the community for its intended purposes. What is the benefit of collecting it if not to use it? More than half of this money, £6.4 million, is for education, with millions more to come in the next few years. None has ever been paid over to schools in the rural area, despite millions being due to them. Time and again, Labour have said that they know what they are doing, that they have all the answers, and that developers never ask for their money back. Well, now we see the change in the wording given in this answer. Now Labour finally accepts that developers will be asking for it back. An absolute failure of direction and leadership that we've been challenging for years. Does this council listen? Does this council have any interest in the welfare of children and residents in the rural areas? If the council can't or won't get its act together, will it stand aside and let councillors talk directly to the developers so that we can secure something for our schools before your abject failure sees the opportunity lost forever?
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Councillor. Behind there. Thank you, Councillor Greaves, for that supplementary question. There is always money in the pot because that doesn't come until certain parts of the development are finished, and some of those projects take a long time to do. Education spending, most of the education spending that's in that is allocated to creating extra spaces. There is no need in most cases for extra places in schools, so therefore it can't be spent on creating spaces that are not needed by the schools, not needed by the education department. So that's why we have to negotiate with them. And as I said many times, it's a legally binding contract. Until the developer agrees to change it, it has to sit there. It's a legally binding document with a big seal at the bottom of it. So until they decide to talk to us and change that agreement, that agreement has to sit by law.
Question 4 was withdrawn. Question 5, Councillor Taylor, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Turner, for your response. We all know that planning is a challenge. We all know that the government is putting increased pressure on authorities such as ours to increase their housing targets. What have you done in the last 2 years, other than reduce the number of planning committees, that has had a positive impact in terms of speeding up the time? Because 12 months for a developer to wait to get permission to build houses is probably something that we can't sustain. Thank you.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, John, for that question. So the council constantly works with developers and looking at different methods to improve the timeframes. We do this by listening to our customers, speaking to our colleagues around the region, incorporating good advice and best practice. Some of the measures we already referred to is that we reduced the planning committee down to 2, and that's helped speed the process because we delegated more power to officers, so they're able to make those decisions themselves quicker. That is starting to now bear fruit. We're updating our development management charter at the end of this year. Early next year. We're just about signing it off now. We've just agreed that. So that will free up officers more time, because one of the things we will stop doing is when somebody rings Kirklees direct up asking for free planning advice, they won't get it. They refer to the website, and that'll free up what we refer to as a smile. That creates a smile which goes to planning office, which we estimate takes up to anywhere between 30 and 35 hours a week to deal with those. So we'll be stopping those. So that free advice that no other local authority provides, we won't do that. We're also going down to the statutory minimum on things like advertising and timeframes. So again, we've been over generous in some cases doing more advertising. So we're going to cut that out and go down to the statutory minimum. We all know there's a shortage of planners, as you well know. There's not only just a shortage of planners, there's environmental officers, conservation officers, they're all in short supply. So they take time. So we're trying to grow our own, employ more people to try and clear that quicker. We were the first council in West Yorkshire to provide planning officers with a planning supplement pay to try and attract more officers. That obviously the others have now caught up with us. We also, on a regular basis, meet with the local building consortium to discuss the problems and how we can move things forward. Of course, one of the other things we've got to bear in mind, everybody only knows about the tricky ones, the ones that's been delayed for whatever reason. We don't hear about the dozens that get approved every month without any problem. So that's another issue. It's the ones that's tricky that you get to hear about. We also meet all our government targets. We actually achieve above our government targets. So yes, sometimes it may take a little longer, but we get to 80% approvals. So sometimes, if it takes a bit longer, but they get the outcome that the developers require or want, that is a positive as far as I'm concerned. We want to work with developers, work with the external organisations to get things moving in Kirklees and build things. So it's not designed not to do that. We're doing everything we can in a difficult market at the moment to deliver a first-class service for our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Cooper, do you have a supplementary for question 6?
I'm sure the Leader of the Council is as concerned as I am. Well, I hope the Leader of the Council is concerned as I am that Barclays has £2 billion in shares and provides £6.1 billion in loans to 9 companies whose weapons, components and military technology are being used by Israel in its attack on Palestinians. That's our bank, the bank that Kirklees uses, Barclays. And so do we really want to be backing that? So looking at the answer that I've received to the question, in here it says we cannot legally or intentionally exclude purchasers from companies directly or indirectly involved in the conflict as specified in the motion. Now, I'm sure many of you followed in Parliament the Economic Activities of Public Bodies (brackets Overseas Matters) Bill last year, and the reason it never became an act was because it was defeated, and that bill was known as the Anti-Boycott Bill, and it was designed to stop councils having an ethical investment policy, having values about the things that it would or would not invest in. That was defeated. So I'm really intrigued to know, Councillor Patterson, what the basis of your legal advice was, and so I'm keen to see that. And of course, you say you're going to respond in due course to the motion that was passed at the last council meeting. Now, I'd like to know, if you can, tell me when in due course is, because a lot of people are really interested to know what the council's going to do and when it's going to do it.
Sorry, Councillor Patterson, before you respond, it is just one supplementary. You've asked 2 questions, 2 supplementaries there, so which one do you want her to respond to?
It's okay, I don't want to shout them all, it's fine.
That's fine, you can answer whichever one you want then.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Yes, there was, I think it was more than 2 supplementaries there, to be honest. Just to say that the Council will be responding to you in due course. I cannot give a date to that. There are officers of the Council looking at the legalities of the earlier part of the motion. But just to let you know, the second part of the motion, which was to write to the government about the concerns of the council. I have had a response to that, which only came this week, I'm afraid, so it is too late. It was too late to get onto the agenda for this council, but it will be there for the next council. Yes, we would like to have, just as an aside, yes, we are concerned about having an ethical policy, but I don't think really that is actually within the remit of your earlier question or even your supplementaries. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Munro, do you have a supplementary to question 7?
Yes, thank you. Is that working? Okay, thank you for outlining the work that you've been doing in Huddersfield and Cleckheaton and Heckmondwike. But I just wondered if you could tell me what you've been doing in Almonbury Ward. Thank you.
Laptops at these times, pads are too big. I'm not aware of anything we've been doing in Almonbury, but I will check with our business team for you.
Thank you. Councillor Butt, do you have a supplementary for question 8?
Thank you, ma'am. I'm really pleased to see that the decision has been made to keep Batley Library in the Carnegie building. Would you care to elaborate on that, Councillor Pinnock?
Sorry, Councillor Butt, that was the question. She's already answered that. Do you have a supplementary to the answer? Sorry.
Pardon me. The supplementary was that, would you be able to just clarify on that answer and also just to confirm whether this is an asset transfer or not? Thank you.
Councillor Butt. So I'm sure you'll join me in celebrating the decision that was made to keep the library where it is, not to move it to the town hall. And that was based on a consultation that took place with the people of Batley, Friends of Batley group, and people who use the library in particular. And as a result of that, what we now need to do is really work through the next stages. And the next stages will be, first of all, to look at the repairs that need to be done in terms of health and safety. And there are a few reports that need to be undertaken. So first of all, there needs to be a maintenance programme, as well as other reports that need to be done to look at keeping the building safe, and also in respect of timescales and cost. But my understanding is that there is an interest in the community possibly taking on that building. I understand there's been no expression of interest in particular, but I do understand that is a conversation that has taken place. But because the library at the moment needs to mirror other libraries, particularly the one in Huddersfield and Dewsbury, in relation to integrated library service, we also need to look at how that's going to work in practice. So there are a number of things that need to be done. This is the very first stage in the process, which is now that it's staying where it is, looking at what's coming next. And I think that's probably it so far. It's very early stages. We're yet to find out what's going to happen next. And any decision that's made is going to be made with the community. So it's not a council decision, it's a joint decision to be made with the community and other stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Armour, do you have a supplementary for question 9?
Yes, please. Right, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank the Cabinet member for her response, and I wish to reassure her I'm not seeking to score political points at her expense. I'm just concerned about the sector. I note that the Nuffield Trust estimates the recent budget will cost the adult social care sector a further £2.8 billion per year. And it's in this context that I think it's of vital importance that this council keeps fully abreast of building pressures on individual care providers and stands ready to make any necessary interventions. I am heartened by her expressions of support for local care providers and simply ask for her assurance that she will continue to ensure that senior officers maintain a close watch on the financial viability of local providers and promptly report back to the Cabinet member if potential problems arise, which is a bit different to budget pressures. Will you do this?
Councillor Addy.
Thank you, Councillor Armour. Yes, we are very aware that these will raise pressures, and as you know, we're waiting for the government settlement. We will do anything within our power that's reasonable to support the independent sector in this matter. And of course, pressures come, pressures go, but this has been reported as a great concern for them. But across all sectors, it's an issue when we want to raise quality of pay for people and we want to raise national insurance. So we will be working closely with Kirklees, our care association, listening to their concerns, and they will be working with their members and bring everything back to us. Hopefully, we won't have anybody who has those individual pressures, but I will be working closely with the officers and keeping an eye on those issues. And I will come back to you when we've had a settlement with more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Addy. Councillor Armour, do you have a supplementary for question 10?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Very, very quickly, I'd just like to thank the Cabinet member for his response, and I will email the full details to him.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, do you have a supplementary for question 11?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Leader, for your response. The reason I've raised this issue is there are 3 things that have happened recently that have been raised with me by communities and worries me about the impact this is having on people's willingness to step forward and volunteer and to organise events. We have the situation where you drive across the district and the Christmas trees that we put up, wonderful Christmas trees, are barricaded. So you've got fencing round them to keep people away, which is hardly in the spirit of Christmas. We've got the festive lights. So if you wish to put up festive lights, you're being told from next year, you've got to fund a structural survey of every single lamppost that you want to put lights up on. These are small community groups that don't have much money, and they're talking about them being personally liable. They're sending out huge papers of documents that need completing and filling in, that some of these community groups are coming to me and going, I don't even know how to do any of this. And then the third one is, if you want to organise an event now, you've got to give 12 weeks notice. And again, there's a huge raft of paperwork that you need to complete. And when I asked the team, could they give some examples of well-completed documents to give to these community groups, say, this is the sort of thing you'll need to do, the answer was, no, we haven't got anything. So I'm already getting people who are volunteers in my villages saying, don't think I'm going to do it again. And so because of the actions this council is taking, we're actually pushing volunteers away. And at a time when financial pressures mean the council is stepping back in some areas and we're asking communities to step forward, what is this council going to do? And when is this council going to start putting the residents first and thinking about the impact on residents of these ludicrous proposals before they come out with them? So just a comment, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Pattison.
Thank you, excuse me, Councillor Taylor, for that. Well, unfortunately, there is this new legislation which is determining that we need to do all these these things to help events be run safely in our communities, which we would all want. But the events team will help wherever they can, but I have to say, just at the moment, they are 2 people to work across the whole of Kirklees. So it is very difficult for them to perhaps give as much help as I certainly would like them to, and they themselves might like to. And perhaps this was the first year with this new legislation, so in future years, or next Christmas, there will be more experience, and the events team will be able to help small community groups to deal with those requirements, which do, I agree with you, seem very top-heavy, but they are necessary to keep our communities safe.
Fencing round the trees, he's asking.
Sorry? Fencing round? Well, that was my answer. We've had fencing around the trees for a long time. Well, certainly mine has.
Thank you, Councillor Pattison. Councillor Cooper, do you have a supplementary for question 12?
I do. Thank you for the response, Councillor Addy. The question was about how robust are the figures which are behind the privatisation of the 2 dementia care homes, Claremont House and Castle Grange. And the answer is that they're robust in some shape or form. But my answer to that my question to that would be, how can you know that? Because yesterday I came to Cabinet and I showed the views of the independent care sector. And the independent care sector have responded to the government's national insurance increase, and 95% of those members of independent providers have said that they're concerned about the increase on national insurance, employers' national insurance. 73% of those providers say they will refuse to accept new packages of care from councils. 57% are saying they're going to hand contracts back to the council. 64% will let staff go. That's the state of the sector. 86% are going to be freezing staff pay. 36% are planning to close down some of their services. 22% are planning on closing down their entire businesses. And this is the sector that we're planning on handing over our care homes with the people we're looking after in those. So when I say, are the figures robust? When I ask that question, I don't think you can really offer a robust answer, because there are so many uncertainties that exist at present with the people that you're talking to. I mean, I hear what you say about them being quality providers, but the quality providers are the members of this care association that have come out with these concerns. So how can you say that your figures are robust?
Given apologies for rudeness, but can I move that we suspend procedural rules to listen to the rest of the questions, please?
Do you have a seconder for that? Second that. Okay, we'll go to the vote using our consoles, and this is to extend this item by to get to the end of the questions. So we're 28 minutes in and we're only on question 12. There's 24 questions. So if you could all vote by using your consoles. That's carried, so we will continue with this agenda item until all the questions have been answered. Well, all the supplementaries have been answered. Fantastic, thank you. So, sorry, Councillor Cooper, was that the end of your supplementary? Yep.
That's fine. No, that's the end of my question. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Addy, response?
I hear your concerns, Councillor Cooper, and it is a difficult time. It's a difficult time across many industries. It's a difficult time for the care providers, and you've already heard me speak to Councillor Armour's question about issues such as the national insurance and how we will, in any way we can, support with the national insurance when we have the care settlement, the funding settlement that provides for care. However, we do have, as I say, and I'll quote this again, quality providers, existing providers in the independent market who are still interested. These are experienced providers. They have seen what's been proposed, what's come in. They are very well aware of the situation and they are still interested. We are asking, as we decided yesterday, for the final bids. Now, we do hope that those providers will still be interested. And we haven't been given any indication, and the news on national insurance has been out for quite a while now. So, we have got no indication that anybody is withdrawing their interest. So we have experienced providers who are already working in this market, who are very well aware of the situation and who are confident they can continue to provide with these homes if they get chosen as the purchaser.
Thank you, Councillor Addy. Councillor Lawson, do you have a supplementary for 13? Yeah.
So, thank you, Madam Mayor, yes. And thank you for the answer to my written question, Councillor Crook. It is understood that there is a national issue with home adaptations. I asked specifically about how long to install a shower under the Accessible Homes avenue at the moment. And up to 14 months does seem like an excessive amount in the maximum, granted in the maximum situation. Can you understand in this position, though, that to somebody with a degenerative disease, and the particular person who prompted me to ask this question has a degenerative disease, is a former is a former councillor and a veteran, not that that should matter, but can you see that that should seem a little bit of extra pressure on them, almost to the point of being discriminatory? Thank you.
Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson, for the follow-up question. I mean, I absolutely do accept that it's a very difficult situation, and I would like to reassure you that the importance of a medical condition is taken into account in the prioritisation of the resource that is available. I'm happy to run through some of the reasons why there's a delay and some of the plans that are in place to improve the situation. The Accessible Homes team is currently implementing a review, and the target time for that early assessment part of the process is 8 weeks. As you will know, there is a divergence of provision in terms of people who are in council properties and people who are in private rented properties. But the Accessible Homes team, started by the occupational therapist, followed by a feasibility surveyor, is the part of the process that will then be reduced to 8 weeks on target. Building Services has a 250 case backlog, so they're who conclude the adaptations for people who are in council property. I don't know if the case that you're referencing is or not, but they've already procured 80 from the private sector to bring down the backlog, and another 80 are out to tender, so soon will be. The service, I mean, the reasons for the delay are that the service hasn't quite recovered from COVID, but to exacerbate the situation, there was a decision made nationally that all of these services had to re-examine all of their previous decisions, which added an enormous workload onto the occupational therapy teams, and that's caused a massive delay. The team in Kirklees has decided to put that to one side for the time being while we concentrate on getting the caseload down. We're also recruiting, trying to double the workforce in actual implementation of the advised adaptations. So the plumbing team, for example, is currently 4.5 full-time equivalents, and we'll be trying to return that to 9 where it was before. There's been a bit of a retention issue in that skill set. In the other part of the process, where if you're in a private rented, the target time will be the same for the occupational therapy and the feasibility survey, but then of course that has to go out to private procurement, and there's a separate fundraising part of the process, fundraising application for the funding part of the process in that case. So the times will always diverge, and I was concerned initially that there was apparently a difference in the service between the two parts of the provision. I am hopeful we will normalise it, and I'm hopeful that we will get it down to a manageable time frame. In fact, after the service review, it's likely that the homes and neighbourhoods, so the council property route, will actually be slightly faster than the private route, but we will try and share resource between the two to manage it and make sure that everyone gets served as quickly as possible. Absolutely share your concern about this. It's not acceptable that people wait as long as that for adaptations when they're suffering from health difficulties. I've dealt with casework myself recently, which is not acceptable, but the service is very mindful of that and doing everything they can to reduce it. And I've already asked them if me lobbying for extra resource within the service would be beneficial. At the moment, that's not the case. I'm getting a briefing on it early in January to make sure that I keep sight of it and ensure that the improvements do go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Cooper, supplementary for question 14.
Yes. So thanks for the response. Given that the expectations of the previous government gave us some fairly high and unachievable targets for housing, which we haven't achieved as a council, and practically every other council in the country's not achieved the targets that were at the behest of the previous government, really. Given that that was the case, how are we going to achieve a 30% higher uplift? Isn't it the developers who are in charge? Isn't it the developers who are the people who are the ones who've got control here and not councils? Are we being set up to fail as a council by your government?
Okay, I think there were a number of supplementary questions in that. Like before, Councillor Pattison, answer whichever one, but just the one, please.
Okay, thank you. No, I don't think we are being... I will ask just the last question, which was, are we being set up to fail? No, I don't think we are being set up to fail. It is obvious that there's a great need and demand for improved numbers of houses. There was a debate as to whether or not that earlier target was the the right one or not. Some people would have agreed that it was. But if we don't set a target, we will never actually make it. The whole process is under consultation at the moment, and we will wait to see what the final outcome of that is. But there is a continuing demand for housing, which I would hope that Kirklees would hope to help meet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Zaman, do you have a supplementary for question 15?
Thank you for the response on the written question. So following the meeting at Batley Library, Councillor Pinnock posted a Facebook video with a different story. Batley Library was not saved. Instead, the financial burden was passed on to the local community, with the community picking up the bill for keeping the library open. So the community are feeling that we're being misled. There was no mention when we had the meeting of any financial community support towards the longevity of the library. So can I ask, if that is the case, what are the time constraints so that the community has the best possible plan to work with the possible partners to make the project successful and work with the different partners to secure the relevant funds?
Thank you, Councillor Zaman. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Councillor Zaman. I don't accept that the community were misled. I understand that a consultation took place for a number of weeks. Various conversations took place about how to keep the library where it is, how to improve on the library, and how to include different elements of the library service, such as the integrated library service, within the Carnegie building. So I don't believe anybody was misled. I don't know whether you were there when those various consultations took place, but I understand various conversations took place and the results are there for everyone to see what was discussed. As I explained to Councillor Butt, the next stage is that there needs to be some sort of assessment in respect of the health and safety and maintenance, and those things will be taking place involving the library service and the corporate landlord. So nobody was misled. And in fact, my understanding was discussions took place in respect of asset transfer. I don't think those discussions would have taken place without some kind of discussion around the financial implications of things and what commitment there might be available in relation to an agreement. So I'm not accepting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Zaman, do you have a supplementary for question 16? Councillor Zaman, did you say yes or no? No. No, sorry. Okay. Moving on to Councillor McGrath. Do you have a supplementary for 17?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, thank you. Firstly, Madam Mayor, may I congratulate you on the swift and professional manner in which you handled the conclusion of the last meeting, safeguarding the integrity of the Chamber, so thank you for that. Councillor Turner, thank you for your response. I must express my disappointment that no clear indication of any timeline has been provided in response to my question. Whilst I understand it may vary and be complicated to give one sweeping average, surely some data could have been provided giving timelines against certain types of planning contraventions. This lack of clarity is particularly concerning for residents in the Home Valley North Ward, such as Meltham Town Centre, who are left waiting indefinitely for inspections regarding what they perceive as a clear breach of planning rules on their doorstep. My question is this. Once the initial inspection eventually takes place and an enforcement notice is issued to a person in breach of the planning regulations, what assurances can be given regarding the follow-up? I raise this concern because I recently came across a letter dated January of this year referring to a follow-up visit to a site on Cliff Road in Gummersall. The letter referenced an enforcement notice originally issued in 1996 when I was 5 years old, which stipulated that changes must be completed by May 1997. What steps can be taken to ensure residents of Meltham do not face a similar 26-year wait for action to be completed? Thank you.
That's 26 years is a bit excessive, I agree, and that was long before my time here as well. Enforcement's a tricky one, isn't it? Because we serve notices, and those that people that have chosen to try and bypass the planning system quite often know the way around the system and will pan these things out for as long as they can and make life very difficult for us. They'll wait till the last minute to appeal against them, and they'll wait till a bit longer, and they just drag it out, unfortunately. If you let me know the specific case in Melbourne, I will look into it for you. Send me the details. But as I say, we have to be very aware that some of the people who do these, in effect break the law, are doing it from a position of knowing the law and how they can push us. And it can take years. I know that's just the way the system is. They can appeal again, they can put applications in and appeal that. So it is challenging for our officers. But they do, and they're very small teams, enforcement now, and they do, I think, under the circumstances, I think they do a really, really good job. They could do better with more people, but we haven't got them, unfortunately.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Don't know, I was just wondering if you were going to share that with the rest of the chamber, Councillor Cooper. Could you please go back to your seat? I thought I'd left my 4-year-old and 15-month at home, but clearly not. I've got a bunch of them here. Right. Sorry, Councillor McGrath, do you have a supplementary for question 18?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. While I have some questions about the accuracy of the reported 0.2% missed bin rate across 188,000 bins in Kirklees, equating to less than 17 missed bins per week per ward, which seems low given the whole streets are often reported as missed to me and other ward councillors. I'm only one of 3. I want to focus on a more pressing issue that came up this week, as it's been mentioned by others. So, considering the recent press release regarding the proposed reduction in grey bin sizes, which would directly impact the very residents raising concerns about the missed bin collections, and lack of catch-up services, so it is relevant to my initial question before anyone questions that. I would like to address comments made by one of your fellow Labour councillors. The councillor, a former group chief whip and Labour employee, publicly referred to the proposal as, and I quote, a daft idea, of which I'm inclined to agree with him on this particular one. And assured residents via his social media, councillor social media, that, rest assured, it's not happening, further stating that by February and March it isn't going to be in it, referring to the budget, supported by an image of Regina George from the American teen comedy Mean Girls with the quote, it's not going to happen. My question on the back of this are these comments accurate? And if so, how can such definitive assurances be made when the consultation results, which you spoke about in the Cabinet, have yet to guide your decisions? How do these public remarks align with the statements made in the Chamber about the draft budget being subject to said consultation? Thank you.
Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath, in terms of your supplementary. In terms of where we are with the budget, the draft budget, the position as far as we're concerned, it's a consultation process, and everybody has the right to express their opinions. Individuals, members, residents, and also our own individual members as well, and they have those rights. I cannot and I will not make any comments about individual comments that have been made, so that is for them, or for them to decide. In terms of the budget-saving proposal that has been presented, I just want to give the key messages in terms of why it is there, the reasons why it's there, and what the aim is. Now, it's an invest to save initiative, and it's saving the council an incredible amount of money because the cost to implement the scheme is around about £4.4 million. But the savings of about, which has been indicated, is 131,000 in year 1, and then subsequent savings every year of just over £500,000, £524,000 each year. So this investment is going to continue to save the council substantial amounts of money over a period of years. Now, this way saves the money in reducing the volume of waste that we dispose of. Kirklees Council, according to the other West Yorkshire and regional and local authorities, has the highest residual waste per household in the region of nearly 600 tonnes of waste per household. And yet we're only recycling about 26% of the waste. So that is the hard facts of where we are as a local authority within our own region and within the others. So disposing of waste is very expensive and does need addressing, and the council is making moves to try and address that. And my final key message on this is it's evidence-based. There's a lot of other councils that have already done this. It's worked. In 2004, there was 94 local authorities, councils, which implemented reduced grey bin sizes. Most of the Greater Manchester did this around 10 years ago. Stockport, Trafford, Manchester City. It has been done, and it has been successful. So since then, even smaller bins have been proposed in some of the local authorities for 140 litres, and we're proposing 180 litres in terms of the proposals, which are working incredibly well. And I'd like to finish off with the main aims of the proposal. It's to manage the waste better, reduce the disposable costs. It is an invest to save, and it's a continuous investment to save once we've invested in that money. It makes the council greener and more efficient, which is very important. And it makes a positive contribution to the climate commitment to net zero carbon emissions by 2038. And it makes, and this is the hard bit which we all need to sign up to, is to give that positive message to residents' behaviours and attitudes to recycling, because that is so important that we do that. So, you know, there are some very incredible positive messages that are coming out of here. And I will finish off by saying it is still a draft budget consultation exercise, and we will listen to everyone. And after that, we will come up with whatever we think, once we've listened to everyone, what the actual proposals will be to take them forward.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor McGrath, before you, I'm sure you'll have a supplementary for question 19, but before you come to that, I forgot to mention in my announcements that there will be a break at some point before 7, because I know a lot of people have started shuffling in their seats. My children tend to do that, which indicates they probably need a break at some point. So I will be calling for a break, so just hang fire if you can, please. Sorry. So moving back to the questions. Supplementary for question 19. Councillor McGrath. No, and I'm not indicating it was yourself that was shuffling.
Sorry, I'll stop shuffling in my seat. Sorry. Thank you for the response, Councillor Crook. And it's just a very simple one. Obviously, it was a great thing that we do SWEP. It's amazing that so many people are taken off the streets in harsh conditions, and I support it and want it to continue. But obviously, the aim is solely to make sure nobody is homeless. So could you confirm how many of the 34 individuals are engaged currently in the housing process, and how likely is it that they will be homed by next Christmas?
Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath, for that supplementary question. I'd just like to clarify that the SWEP protocol, the Severe Weather Emergency Protocol, is to help people who are rough sleeping rather than homeless, and it's a really important distinction because the numbers of homeless that we see nationally are considerably higher than the number of rough sleepers. Something like 300,000 people homeless nationally, 150,000 children. Most of those are in temporary accommodation at a cost which is causing great difficulty for local authorities across the country. I will speak a little bit more about housing presumably after the break now, Madam Mayor. But just to clarify on the SWEP protocol, so we had the Severe Weather Emergency Protocol was activated for 7 nights. We had 34 individuals housed during that time. We don't know the history of all of those individuals, so I can give you a breakdown. 24 presented for temporary accommodation and didn't provide their history, so we don't know what their circumstances are. Some of them did provide a history. 2 of those are now in temporary accommodation. 7 of the people that we housed were rough sleeping. We know that for certain because some of them were picked up from the street. They'd called or someone had called on their behalf. But it's a very difficult situation. I share your concern, and we're doing everything we can to reduce the number of rough sleepers in Kirklees and to make sure that people who are unfortunately rough sleeping, it's for a short period of time. There's complexity around some of the cases, and so it isn't as straightforward as just providing a hostel, but I have pushed to allocate funding directly to try and make sure that even when we haven't activated the severe weather protocol, we don't have people sleeping on the streets in Kirklees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Scott, do you have a supplementary for question 20?
No, Madam Mayor. 21, 22 and 23, it's been answered in the question that was submitted by Councillor.
Okay, so we will move on to 24. Councillor Hussain, do you have a supplementary? Yeah.
Is it the library one here? So my supplementary is, given that you just allocated an additional 16.5 million for a purpose-built library in Huddersfield, that includes various amenities, an adjacent food hall that is all integrated and newly built to Huddersfield Town Centre, and a further 10 million to the George Hotel, making it a total of 30 million. Councillor Amanda Pinnock, you were not there to hear what Richard Parry said to us all when we were at the congratulatory meeting. Richard Parry said that there was no conditions that needed to be met. Further to add, why are you consulting Councillor Butt, as he is a Heckman White Ward councillor and we are Batley councillors? We celebrated the Batley Library remaining open with the local community, and it was reflected on the social media posts. Several hours later, a video was circulating with yourself, Councillor Amanda Pinnock, who said it would stay open, but the local community would need to fundraise to keep its door open. This was never mentioned.
Councillor Hussain, could I just ask, are you asking a supplementary?
Yes, I am asking a supplementary. I'm just adding context to it.
24, yeah.
23. 23.
23, right.
23. Okay. It is. If you let me finish, I will get to the question. Thank you. We celebrated that the Batley Library remaining open with the local community, and it was reflected on social media posts, and several hours later a video was circulating with yourself, Councillor Amanda Pinnock, whom said it would stay open but the local community would need to fundraise to keep its doors open. This was never mentioned on the congratulatory meeting. Both local councils and community groups and wider members of the general community feel misled. Our Batley Library is the heart of our Batley Town Centre. It provides warm space, mental health services, health events.
Councillor Hussain, if you just stop just for one moment.
23 appears to be in relation to asset transfer. That doesn't seem to be in what's been put forward by Councillor Hussain.
That I am getting to it. If she lets, Madam Mayor, if she lets me finish.
You don't just stand up and say point of order. You stand up and say which procedure rule you're referring to. You're deliberately interrupting a colleague, which is disgusting.
Thank you, Councillor. Can you please take a seat? Councillor Hussain, I'm going to let you continue with asking the supplementary to question 23. If you could please get to that point, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. So, our Batley Library is the heart of our Batley Town Centre. It provides warm space, mental health services, health events, space for elderly and vulnerable people, amongst other manual users. What is the money that this council and indeed this administration is committing to Batley Library for the long term, considering you now would not need that 1 million to move the services across?
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. Councillor Pinnock.
I'm still waiting for the supplementary on asset transfer. But anyway, I will try to answer that question, which is very similar to what I've responded to before. At this moment in time, we can't confirm what's going to be needed, what funds are going to be needed for this particular library. As I've explained, there needs to be a maintenance programme which looks at the cost of things, health and safety, which will be assessed by the library service and corporate landlord. So I cannot answer that question at this stage. There needs to be further investigation done so that that can be looked at. That information will be made available at some stage to members in this chamber and also to friends of groups or anyone else who has an interest in Batley Library. The information will be made available.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Hussain, do you have a supplementary for question 24?
So my supplementary is, why are you currently reviewing all school crossing patrols with regards to continuing the roles?
Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. In terms of school crossing patrols, some of the other methods that we have used, which is a very important factor in terms of, but not limited to, in terms of making travel safe, includes the promotion of safe and active travel to schools through the mode shift initiatives, with around 45 schools which have currently actively been working with us. And I'm pleased to say that in terms of the accreditation with mode shift, I'm very pleased to say that as far as Batley High School is concerned, they're currently one of the top regional schools for Yorkshire and the Humber. And recently they've won this award and will be shortly representing them in Kirklees at the National Awards in March. In terms of Dalton Junior and Infant Schools, there's been recent mode shift finalists for the Education Project of the Year 2024 and has a Kirklees project for active travel first aid, which was the finalist in the innovative projects of the year. So we are leading edge in terms of trying to make sure that we're looking at safety and travel safety in those areas where there are school crossing patrols. Pedestrians and road safety training this term from September to December so far has been about 5,963 children that attended at least one session. This time last year we were around about 3,200, so we're doing well. So there's a number of training things which have been happening, which is pedestrian training, scooter training, first aid training, road safety in terms of physical education, and supporting of bikeability cycle training run by external partners. And recently we rolled out in 2024 the Junior Active Travel Ambassadors Programme with 12 schools already signed up and engaged with the team. So we are doing some work, we're continuing to do some work. We've got far more to go in terms of what else we need to do, but I think we are proud to say that we are actually ahead of the game in terms of trying to ensure that, that there is good practice.
Well done.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to clarify, obviously, having had that portfolio historically, the modal shift is all about pedestrians and encouraging children to walk to school. And my question was, why are we currently reviewing all school crossing patrols with regards to continuing the roles? And I don't feel that question was answered.
Councillor Ahmed? No, sorry. Yeah.
The situation with school patrols, as I mentioned in my response to yourself, is that we've got an issue with vacancies. And I'm going to plead to the full council here, is that we actually have a number of large vacancies where we can't recruit. So please go back to your wards and get the messages out to people that it's not that there is a freeze, it's not that there is a budget cut, it's the fact that we're not being able to attract people to those positions. So it's important that we do that, and I would give that message to everyone to say, please help us in getting that message out to your communities and your residents to do that, and I completely share your views in terms of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. That brings us to the end of agenda item 8. Agenda item 9 are the minutes of meetings of Cabinet, and they are here for information and to note. I am going to now call for a break, and if we could all reconvene at 5 to 7, please. Thank you. Before we move on to item 10, Councillor Sokal.
Mayor, sorry, it's my mistake. I forgot to give apology from Councillor Hannah McCarthy.
Thank you, Councillor Sokal. We'll make sure that those are noted. So, item 10, holding the executive to account. So, part A of this item, Council will receive a portfolio update from the Deputy Leader of the Council, Housing and Transport Portfolio Holder, Councillor Crook. And then oral questions and comments to Cabinet members on their portfolios and on Cabinet minutes will be as part of Part B. So, Councillor Crook, you have a 10-minute, maximum of 10 minutes to present your portfolio update. Thank you.
Slides and everything. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to say something about housing because I think we can all agree there's something of an acute housing crisis nationally and by extension here in Kirklees. And I think we need to decide collectively as a council on the way forward. And I'm always happy to speak to any group about housing and how we move it forward from that perspective. So I'd like to split this presentation up slightly and talk a bit about the context of social housing first. And then hopefully there's time and I can give a little bit of an update about our housing provider here in Kirklees. So the purpose of social housing, in one form or another, has been around for a long time. There has been and there is a recognition that housing is a basic need, that without good housing, life chances are significantly diminished. So secure, good quality housing leads to better education and training outcomes, better health, better mental health, better life chances, higher aspirations, better paid jobs. And there's been a reduction in social housing availability and in council housing in particular. In the past, levels of social housing have expanded dramatically to meet demand. So, for example, post-war, and most housing stock, even that we use today, was built between 1919 and 1980. But there has been a reduction in available housing, particularly since 1980, a significant reduction due to right to buy with a loss of 2 million council homes, many of which are now being rented back to the state at higher rates and in a poorer state of repair and with lower tenant standards. We've seen a corresponding reduction in the proportion of the population that lives in council housing as well, from a peak of 33% to 16% today. We currently have nationally over 1.3 million people waiting for a social home, and as I said earlier, in response to a question, 300,000 homeless, including 150,000 children homeless. At the same time, a reduction in the number of houses being built overall has happened. In the past, councils have been a key delivery partner for social homes when there's been a need, but since the 1980s, councils have not built at the scale seen before. And private build and other social housing providers, housing associations and so on, have not remotely closed the gap. So on this graph, green is council building, and you can see from about 1980 that that's missing. And if we're going to meet the targets that the government's talking about now, we need to get back up to where the peaks have been. So that's just an illustration of the failure of the private sector and housing associations to meet that gap. Social housing in Kirklees, so just to give you a quick rundown of our context, the graph there is the last 10 years, our housing numbers, where we lose about 200 per year to right to buy. We have 22,000 homes roughly, nearly the same again in terms of waiting households, so probably 40,000 residents waiting for a social home. Turnover is about 1,500 per year in our housing stock, which is less than the number of homeless presentations we get, so the waiting list has very little chance. There's a 2% chance of getting a home if you're on Band C, for example. But within that, we do have very acute pressure in certain parts of our housing sector, so if you need a 4-bed or bigger, we have a waiting list of 660, and only 8 allocations happened in the last period, so very, very difficult and challenging. There's also registered providers in Kirklees, 20 additional providers with approximately 6,000 homes between them, but we do not have the same allocations control. So that makes it much more difficult for us to use it in the same way. So on the future of social housing, eligibility for social housing and the acute lack of supply leads to a narrowing of that eligibility and is only sufficient and probably not even sufficient to provide for the most acute need, to provide a safety net for those who suffer from extreme vulnerability of one form or another. This is what officers call residualisation of housing stock and leads to even more pressure on social landlords since the tenants that we do house probably have acute additional needs which provide, need additional support and makes it more difficult as a landlord. So the question really that we need to answer as a council is should social housing be just to assist the most vulnerable? And I'd say ideally not, given the waiting lists which persist despite the long waits that people are subject to. And also because this leads to characterisation of tenants and stigmatisation and the production of unbalanced and unsustainable communities. And people then find it difficult to get out of that situation, so employment chances and so on are further impacted negatively. And I just note here that our vulnerable tenant policy, which is on flight path to Cabinet, does recognise extreme poverty as a vulnerability. So we all want to care for the vulnerable, and I guess the question then is social housing in that context an intrinsic part of the health service, or is it part of the welfare state as historically? And if that's so, then why do we view housing less positively than we do, say, schools and hospitals, which are also part of the health and welfare state? So my view is that a council home should be available as a positive choice to live in a secure, warm, decent and collectively owned municipal home. There are advantages to that. There's economies of scale in terms of the maintenance of your property. So to sum up, regardless of our views, we do need to dramatically increase supply nationally and in Kirklees because we're not even meeting the highest need at the moment. And only councils have been able to do this historically, so probably only councils can do it now through enablement from central government. Next slide. So Homes and Neighbourhoods was outsourced. It was an arm's length organisation, came back in April 2021, was rebranded into a confusingly similar acronym, but there's some of the rebranded vans there for your edification, and entered into a period of self-assessment immediately and also self-referred to the regulator of social housing immediately on the basis of outstanding fire safety actions. We, as part of the self-assessment, employed external contract consultants because we wanted to ensure that there was robust assurance on the level of investment that was required. In 2023, we also self-reported because of persistent high levels of cases in damp, mould and condensation, which became more prominent after the sad death of Arab Ishak. Another key issue was missing data on our stock condition. So we didn't actually know the maintenance backlog that we had in any detail. That fundamental lack of information, we don't know what we don't know, so more things might come to light and have come to light as we've worked through. Known unknowns and unknown unknowns, I think is the phrase. For example, we recently became aware that there was an issue with our assurance on water safety, but we are managing that very effectively and treating, I think, assessing, I think, 113 houses a day. So in terms of our ambition and commitment, we're absolutely committed to tenant safety. That's our principal concern. Safe homes, the increase in regulatory burden following, as I said, the sad death of Arab Ishak, but also the fire at Grenfell have placed extra demand. And we have, in response to the first point there, the damp, mould and condensation, totally redesigned that process, and that came through Cabinet in September. There is a massive programme of investment and improvement on a fabric first and transparent basis. We've got a maintenance backlog that will be caught up within the next 5 years, all homes to a decent standard within 5 years. We are working against the regulatory notice that we received in March 2024, working towards compliance. We are investing a total of 382 million into our council homes by 2032, and a lot of that is the maintenance backlog that we're experiencing. I would also say that the regeneration programme that we have in our council housing is contributing to our overall regeneration of our town centres. So high customer service and customer satisfaction as measured against our tenant satisfaction measures, which are now published. Closer working with tenant-led panels to ensure that tenants have a voice in that transformation journey. Benchmarking against other providers, making sure we're compliant in terms of training. Tenant support teams, we have money advice teams, single relationships with housing officers, which I think will work more effectively for our tenants. And we are moving towards having complete stock condition data. We will be completing 40% in the next year, 40% the year after, and then 20% on a rolling programme. Also a decarbonisation strategy to ensure that our homes are at least an EPCC, but constantly trying to do better than that. And this is a picture of the Abbey Road retrofit programme, which is a very high standard and something we would like to aspire to. And just a tiny bit more on progress. So there's an artist's impression of Buxton House there, indicating the contribution to town centre regeneration that housing can provide. We'll be investing £57 million into our collective high-rise portfolio. We've got a brand new IT system which will come live in 2025 and help to improve standards and maintenance programmes and so forth. We're improving our direct labour organisation and extending our in-house capacity to reduce cost and also delay to repairs for residents, and a fundamental redesign process in many areas of our landlord function. And I've just got a slide here which will show you the complexity of just one piece of the work that is underway from officers. And this is a part of the redesign, or reporting on the redesign of the damp mould and condensation programme. And that, I think, is everything that I wanted to say. I've tried to rush through it to get it in the 10 minutes. I think I've just about do that. But if I've just got 10 seconds left, I would like to thank all the officers for their work in the transformation of homes and neighbourhoods, which is underway and I think is really positive. There's been really a real meaningful change in the service and very much worth celebrating in my view. And also particularly to thank Naz Parker, our Director of Housing, who is retiring at the end of the year and who's been an excellent partner in my time as a portfolio holder for housing. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crooks. So Part A is now complete. We will move on to Part B, and this is the oral questions and comments to Cabinet members on their portfolios or on Cabinet minutes, and we have a total of 50 minutes for this section of item 10. Councillor McGrath.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Back to talking rubbish. So, Councillor Ahmed, I don't envy your position, as we've discussed, with even people in your own party calling these things daft. But you mentioned Stockport, Manchester and other councils when looking at successes. Well, Manchester had 3 240-litre bins when they decided to reduce their standard waste down to 140. They now have 4 bins, which add up to 560 litres of rubbish. Where's our increase in litrage? If you want to encourage recycling, give us the opportunity. We've still only got a 240-litre recycling bin. Give us the opportunity to recycle glass. Let us take rubble to the skip. How many things do you want to put in the way of us recycling and then say, we'd like you to recycle more? Thank you.
Councillor Ahmed.
I think we've all got to make a start, and if you remember what I said was that we're at the low pecking order in terms of our performance, in terms of the waste that we actually produce and the recycling. We're nowhere near our counterparts in terms of the region. And I think we've got to make some start. We've got to do it. We're not saying this is the end product. Yes, 1 from 2 to 3 to 4. 4 bins will eventually be great, even more. And those are our wishes, ambitions and desires. But at the moment, I think we are making a start, and we're not saying it's the end, and this is why it's a part of the consultation to try and get it right. So I take on board your views, and I agree with those views because that's the vision and the ambition in terms of what we want to do. But at the moment, I think it's important that we make that start.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Ali Arshad, please.
Councillor Raddy, I unapologetically wish to bring up the issue of our 2 dementia care homes back onto conversation, and why the pressure group is upset and the lack of information. And if we have interest from the private sector, if I remember in the early stages, the word dementia was missed out and just care home was used. So if we have 2 or 3 organisations that are interested and they put the bids in, at what stage did the term dementia come back into play? If we look at the fact that there's a massive disparity between the 1.8 million and the 0.8 million when it comes to the numbers that were given out, and the 1 year versus the 5 years worth of projected data that we could have used. More importantly, there's a recruitment agency that has a massive amount of money going to this recruitment agency. Has it been a knee-jerk reaction? Did we not get to the numbers quick enough to be able to first understand where we could have managed as far as our people and resources are concerned before we put it onto the table for it to be privatised? And remember, the concern of the people here is profit before people. So if these numbers, the timeline, terminology hasn't been taken into consideration, can we put everything back onto the table and not come to any rash decisions and deal with the actual team that is there to save our dementia care homes and look at it from a different light? That's my ask.
Councillor Addy.
Thank you, Councillor. I think when we look at the figures, the financial analysis that's informed the proposals of the transfer of both care homes is based on a multi-year analysis with historical performance, data alongside the future projections on financial viability. We are where we are with the funding of the council, and although we'd hope into the future that funding situations will improve, at this point in time, this is where we are. We need to look to the future, find the best solution, and find good quality care providers to take these on. Then we can reshape the care market and the council can focus on its area of excellence with Knoll Park, giving daycare and the care homes in the private sector, supported by the fees that the council can offer. And as I've said before, wherever possible, we will be supporting the private sector to offer those quality pay levels and supporting with national insurance if we get the settlements that will bring that money in. Because I do believe that, of course, those carers are a crucial part of our system for looking after our most vulnerable in society, and we need to value their care, their contribution. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Addy. Councillor John Lawson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Question for Councillor Turner from yesterday's Cabinet. There was an interesting comment you made after I talked about businesses being impacted by the mothballing of Cleckheaton Town Hall, or Spen Town Hall as it's alternatively known. You kindly offered to check whether some of those businesses had indeed suffered any loss of footfall or profits. That was a surprise to me because I did ask when the town hall was first mothballed that we look into this and start benchmarking effects on businesses then. And I was told, and I quote because this was in a public forum, it was at Cabinet I think, that you said the team was quite small and that it wouldn't have capacity, it probably wouldn't have capacity to do that. So I wonder whether we've got a bigger team or whether we're more motivated to check what those impacts are on local businesses. And I wonder how you're going to do that, because again, since then I've asked you to do some proactive business surveys. Those haven't come forward. And I wonder if there's any mechanism to actually check whether businesses have been impacted other than a fishing expedition through local businesses' books.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. You're right, I did say that yesterday, but that was yesterday. Today's today. I haven't quite had time to speak to officers. I will be doing that next week to try and find out what the best way to look at the impact of the closure of Town Hall is. But as I say, give us a chance, please.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Cathy Scott, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question's to Councillor Ahmed again, and it's probably a really stupid question. But back in June, a message was sent to all councillors regarding cross-contamination of bins. You're talking about reduction in bins, and in that email to councillors, it actually says that glass was getting put in the green bins, nappies, food waste, plastic bags, garden waste. If you're going to, that actually tells you the size of the bin we have now is not ample. So thinking about a reduction of the future could really pose a problem. So I'm asking why you would go down that or even consider it, because you did earlier mention some other councils. So to me, that means you've really done a deep dive into this. So I'd like to know why you do that. And Mayor, I'm not too sure if we can get a supplementary after that.
Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. I am getting grilled today, aren't I? That's fine. In terms of cross-contamination, just to tell you about glass, the performance is very, very small, and I was speaking to Councillor McGrath about that because he mentioned it as well, is that we don't actually have a massive amount of glass which goes into the grey bin, because we do look at that, we monitor it. And the amount that we would have to invest in to try and separate that from the grey bin, it's not at this moment in time realistic or worth it to actually go down that line. But in terms of cross-contamination with the others, you know, this is a start. The green bin is there. We're not reducing the size of that green bin. We're keeping it there because the whole aim is a behavioural and an attitude change to residents to start thinking recycle. They have to start thinking to recycle so that we start filling those, because majority of the green bins are not filled. It's the grey bins, because it's easy to know, oh, well, I can't think about that, I'm going to stick it into the grey bin. And it's about thinking about what goes into the green bin and the grey bin. I think the ultimate aim would be what Councillor McGrath said. We should have 4 bins, 5 bins to do all that. We haven't got a system in place to be able to do that in terms of glass, food, and other recyclable items as well. I think it's a start. We're not ahead of the game, according to the other local authorities, and we need to start working fast on this. So the deep dive is just to make a comparison with the other local authorities. I'm not saying we've got the solutions or the answers to those, but we're looking towards making sure that we can make a start.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. And Councillor Scott, you do get a supplementary.
Thank you for the response. Whilst I admire Councillor McGrath asking that, I'm Cathy Scott asking this question. So I'm not going to morph here. One of the questions that I'm adding on it, because we're talking about cross-contamination, and it's really important that you realise bin reduction will make people not think about recycling. They will use the green bin. The bin men come, take it to the site, one item in there, and that load gets refused. Absolutely refused. So it's not that a little piece of rubbish they're going to refuse, it's a full wagging. You need to take all this into account. So my plea to you is, go away, think about what you're doing, because this area is really contentious area, and putting out statements has really done it a lot of damage.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Ahmed?
Yeah, I'll reiterate when I started. This is a consultation exercise. We are listening, and we will continue to listen. There is a period for us to listen to see what are the best options for us. And we will consider all those options, and thank you for your suggestions and advice, and we are listening, and we will take that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed and Councillor Cooper. One meeting in here at a time, please, and please don't shout over people. Wait until it's your turn to speak.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Crook, for your presentation. I think it warrants a bit more discussion within the chamber, and a few thoughts. We are a capital constrained council, and so things like housing development, in terms of social housing development, where it may well be on hold at the moment, but that may change, who knows, as we go forward. But one of the things we need to consider, I think, as well as simply building new homes, is looking at purchasing homes, existing homes within the private sector. And a reason that might be a good thing to do is because, exactly like you were saying, there's all that stigmatisation that's often involved with people who who live in a council estate or have recently got a council house. And I think we need more mixed communities, and I think more purchasing homes is a big part of that. And also it gives us an opportunity to do retrofit as well on those new properties and learn new skills, things. On retrofit, I'm concerned that EPC level C is our ceiling and not actually our ambition. And we are a council which is signed up to be a zero carbon council by 2036. And that includes council housing as well as the council's own estate, and because the housing is actually part of that estate. So I know that it's going to be a huge task to do that. It'll be £1 billion plus to actually get us up to zero carbon. But we need to be planning for that to at least show that we've got the direction of travel to achieve zero carbon. Because if we're going to do it, it's 11 years that we need to do that. And if we have a plan, then at least we can go to government with a plan explaining how we will do that. One last thing really is we've got, I think from, I don't know about other people, but in terms of the issues that we have on estates, we have a high turnover of staff in housing services. And that means that a lot of the issues that we deal with on a day-to-day basis are difficult because you start with new staff all over again, going through the same old problems and trying to explain to them the issues. And sometimes that means that people who are having issues are very frustrated and think that the councillors are doing nothing about issues, and that's causing me lots of difficulty. So a question really about retrofit, how we're going to mainstream that and get it up to a high standard, how we're going to address staffing, the staffing crisis that we have within housing and right the way across it in various areas. Yeah, I'd be interested in your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crook, just before you answer, can I just remind members it's one question and then one supplementary? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll try and answer both or all of the questions in sequence, if that's all right, since you've asked them. Purchasing homes that are already built, I absolutely agree. That's part of the solution. We have, there's a time delay if you try and build new housing. I think that we do two things. We try and meet the challenges that we have locally by purchasing homes and by small building sites, but I think in terms of meeting the national housing crisis and and referencing back to our waiting list, which was 19,199 last time I looked at the end of November, we need national guidance on that. We need to have national programmes of building, and probably we need a new way of delivering those stock as well, because the traditional building techniques will take a long time to deliver those numbers of housing. We need to probably look at modular build, that sort of thing, which will allow us as well to certify the performance of those new properties in a factory setting. One of the big problems that, well, I'll get into that in a minute. So one of the recent government policy changes that has given us more leeway on that is we're allowed to keep more of the right to buy receipts. So historically, we only kept a third of the right to buy receipts. I think the typical or the average receipt that we got in Kirklees homes and neighbourhoods was £50,000. By the time you've divided that by 3, there isn't a great deal of money left to build a new house. Even if you own the land to start with, it's orders of magnitude out. Now we're allowed to combine Section 106 funding with at least 2/3 of the right to buy receipt, albeit that the government has also quite rightly put in legislation that will hopefully stop the loss of social homes to right to buy. But we are trying, and we are buying stock, including buying back leasehold properties that were bought by tenants, became residents under the right to buy schemes. In terms of retrofit, absolutely agree with you. I mean, EPCC is a target which we think will be a legal minimum. So we are absolutely aiming higher than EPCC and actively seeking any funding that's available for decarbonisation of stock. It's an industry that I know well. I work in it as well as being a councillor. We should be aiming for passive house or NFIT standard in all of our housing, and with an aspiration to zero carbon. I don't mean zero carbon in the 2038 council perspective. I mean zero carbon as in a house which requires no carbon to run. The other thing about those standards is that they're a paper exercise. So when you build a new house here, building control standards that you adhere to are not certified post-construction. If we move to a passive house standard, as other countries in Europe have done, that's a national issue, not an issue specifically for Kirklees homes and neighbourhoods, then it's a post-build certification programme. So you are guaranteed that the performance of that building at the point of construction is at that high standard. So absolutely agree with that, but it's a national issue. We can't solve that as homes and neighbourhoods. Our principal function as a landlord here is to make sure we've got as many homes as possible to serve the people who need homes in Kirklees. So I am part of some national lobby groups, including the Southwark Council group on the future of council housing, and certainly I make that case every time I get an opportunity in that forum as well, and I understand that's fed straight back to ministers, so hopefully they will start to listen. In terms of staff turnover, totally agree. It's quite difficult to retain staff, not just in homes and neighbourhoods, but across the public sector, because wages tend to be a bit higher in the private sector. I think that one of the things that I touched on in my presentation was about making housing a positive choice, and I think if we make housing a positive choice rather than this residualised stock where we've got a very challenging environment to provide for people with challenging vulnerabilities, and also having to turn people away who have slightly less challenging circumstances, then that will make it more easy to retain staff. So I'm hopeful that will work out over time. I think that's it. I think I've answered everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Bolt. Sorry. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Cooper? Of course you do.
Supplementary. So thanks for the answer. Really interesting. One thing that request I would have is that would it be possible to have a plan for decarbonising our housing stock by 2036? Because I don't believe that exists yet. And it should be something that if we're going to begin that journey, we should have a plan for decarbonising our housing stock. So is that something that we can develop?
Councillor Crook.
So in terms of the technical way that we would deliver that, that's absolutely fine. In terms of the funding, then we need government to change policy on that. And I think one of the things that we're lobbying for very strongly through the Southwark Group and other housing lobbying groups is that when there is a change in a regulationary burden placed onto a housing provider or landlord, social landlord, particularly a council provider, that there is also funding that comes with that. So that doesn't only apply to our thermal performance in terms of the efficiency of the buildings, it also applies to things like decent homes, and we're expecting Decent Homes 2 to come along. That places a large capital spend burden on our housing landlord, which we do not have the resource to meet. We're a not-for-profit landlord. We charge very low rent compared to the market average. It's a struggle to maintain the houses, and we quite rightly put maintaining the houses we've got as a priority, and as I've said before, and we'll keep saying tenant safety being the highest priority. So making sure that the stock that we have is as good as we can make it with the resource that we have, and also being receptive to any possibility of receiving money to raise the standards of our homes. So I've said there's two things, isn't there? So we can have a plan about how we would deliver it, and we've done pilot schemes like the Abbey Road scheme, which was pictured there. I know it's a few years ago, but that was a pretty good retrofit project. I think we can do better than that now. Technology's moved on, standards have moved on, but we can't have a plan for how we magic a lot of money out of thin air, so we need government to partner with us on that.
Councillor Cooper, you've asked your supplementary. Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Martin Bolt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I first start by paying tribute to a school in Kirklees which has won 2 prestigious education awards. I would have hoped that it would have been mentioned earlier, but one of the Hetman Dwight councillors seemed more bothered about Batley this time. Hetman Dwight Grammar School has been named the best secondary school in the north of England by the Sunday Times Parent Power Guide, and it's also been given an award for the secondary state school for academic excellence. As a Wycliffean, it pains me to congratulate them, but seeing as nobody else is, can I congratulate Hetman Dwight Grammar School?
Thank you, Thank you, Councillor Ball. And can I just also put on record, Carlton Bowling in one of the Batley Awards has also received an award. Is it just Carlton? Sorry, Carlton, that's in Bradford, wrong district. Yeah, Carlton Infant and Junior School have also won the same award. So can I just put on record and make sure that we send our congratulations to both the head teachers at those schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We must recognise excellence, particularly in schools like Hetman Dwight Grammar School, which for a long time saw dogma from certain members of this council who'd been there and then tried to close it down afterwards. I know we've the current mayor of West Yorkshire is a former pupil there, I believe. Turning to the presentations, we've heard today that decisions must be evidence-based. We've heard a cabinet member say we are listening. So taking those into account, could I ask what evidence and data did the cabinet member have to make a statement when changing the car parking provision in Mirfield that changing from a short stay car park may adversely affect commuter parking? Historically, Mirfield's central car park off Station Road behind the library, it's not the station car park as was mentioned in the cabinet, but it's on Station Road. There is a big difference between being a station car park and being a car park on Station Road. Historically, it's had a 3-hour maximum wait. This was arrived at because we were listening. We as local councillors, the town council and our community, consulted with residents, consulted with shopkeepers, and we consulted with shoppers, visitors from outside. And a 3-hour maximum with no return for 2 hours gave a turnover of parking. The cabinet member, in changing what people had been consulted on, so again, we are listening, may have been listening, but they didn't take any notice because they changed their mind at the 11th hour, said that this was because he didn't want to displace commuter parking for the railway station elsewhere. Now, again, I ask, what evidence and data is there to show that anybody has ever parked in the Station Road car park as a commuter when you only had 3 hours to do so? You wouldn't be going very far on a train in 3 hours, would you? Probably get to Dewsbury and back if you were lucky with the trains these days. He also said that he was making changes given the availability elsewhere in Mirfield for shoppers to park. What other car parking has Kirklees Council got in Mirfield where our shoppers can park? So we are listening, it's evidence-based and data-driven. Where is the evidence and where's the data?
Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Councillor Waltz. I think we did have an extensive discussion and debate in terms of car parking, and there was also extensive consultation that was carried out in each ward, if I may say, and every single ward member, those that did take part in those consultation exercises, were given that opportunity to do this. I haven't got those details at hand with me now, even though I know I was a part of that, and I can get you that information in terms of what evidence was there. But we did listen, and we did actually try and make sure that we could accommodate as much as possible. Because if you go back, the whole original review was to actually put up the car parking charges for every single car park that was in Kirklees. And I think after the review and then after a comprehensive consultation with everyone, that has been whittled down. And the Chief Executive himself actually went and visited a lot of those car parks himself as well. So there was some extensive involvement in discussion and also review as well. But in terms of the specific evidence that you're requesting, I haven't got those at hand with me now, but I can provide that information to you. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Bolt, do you have a supplementary?
It'd be churlish not to, Madam Mayor, wouldn't it? Could I ask the Cabinet member to look then, as this council is working through WICA and seems to be working quite well with the Network Rail and TransPennine Route upgrade, to come back to the Mirfield councillors and indeed councillors from around, because like colleagues have mentioned about the Spen Town Hall, facilities, although located in a ward, are not solely for that ward. I've mentioned for the Cabinet members, because I know they're all Huddersfield residents, that Mirfield Railway Station is the only railway station in Kirklees with a direct link to London, and it's the only railway station in the new Spen Valley constituency. So taking on board its strategic importance, what work has the Cabinet member done with Network Rail and TransPennine Route upgrade to increase the on-station car parking to generate more sustainable travel and reduce volume of cars on the roads?
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Councillor Ahmed. Sorry, Councillor Crowe.
Oh, sorry, I need to turn it off.
I think firstly, I clarify, Home Firth is not part of Huddersfield, it's its own town, and I'm very proud to be from Home Firth and live there. I'm not entirely sure whether your question is about car parking or about transport, but I'm happy to talk a little bit about our ambitions for not only mode shift, but also multimodal transport. And I think that the most important thing that we need to do is ensure that our various modes of transport, so our soon-to-be refranchised bus network and our soon-to-be renationalised railway network, are interconnected, so people can take a bus from where they live and then get a train to where they need to go. We also need to make sure there is cycle parking at train stations, so people who like cycling can cycle to the train station, securely store their cycles there and go on the rest of their journey. And absolutely, yes, we also need to make sure that for those of us that still have to use a car, there is an opportunity to park and then get a train. I can't speak to the car parking part of the question specifically because the transport programme that I'm involved in, which is more the Wicker funded capital programme around here, doesn't go into that detail on TransPennine projects, but I'm happy to get back to you if you want to email about any specific projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Anthony Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Question to Councillor Ahmed. Does the Cabinet member accept that increasing recycling does not reduce the total amount or volume of waste that a household generates?
Councillor Ahmed.
I need to find out a little bit more about that, but I think in terms of increasing recycling... Sorry?
Councillor Smith, let him answer. You will get a supplementary.
Yeah, there'll be a supplementary. I'm just saying that increasing cycling, does it increase the volume of waste? Well, I mean, the whole objective of recycling is to reduce the volume of waste, and that's exactly what we're trying to do, because if we can reduce that volume of waste, which is going to be recycled in various different forms, then the overall waste has to be reduced. So that's my understanding of how recycling and waste is going to be there. But we, as I've mentioned earlier on, we're at the bottom of the rung in terms of recycling. There are other local authorities which are ahead of the game with 4 bins. You know, they're doing the glass, they're doing the food, they're doing recycling of cardboard and paper. We're not in that position at the moment yet, so we need to develop ourselves to make sure that we can do that. But the objective of recycling is to try and make sure that we can reduce that waste, and that's the whole objective of most of the recycling.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Smith, do you have a supplementary?
I do, Mayor, thank you.
Do you want to press your buzzer?
Thank you. The point I was trying to make is that if you consider waste as whatever you're going to put in a bin, that could go for recycling, it could go into landfill. The overall volume of waste is not reduced by recycling. Now, the trouble is, as you've admitted, is that this council has got an appalling recycling system. It is appalling. It is, honestly. We've got so few options. Yeah, we're at the bottom of the ladder, was the way that you put it. Now, the good residents of Lindley, like myself, I think are fairly diligent in terms of recycling what they can recycle, given the options they've got. I know that when my recycling bin goes out for collection, it's full, as is my household waste bin. Now, surely you can accept that you're putting the horse before the cart here with this proposal. What you should be doing is giving people more options to recycle more of their waste before you reduce the size of the bin. You're just going to create a massive problem with rubbish piling up on the streets and upsetting all of our residents who are trying to do a diligent job, and you're not giving them the tools to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Ahmed.
As I mentioned earlier, we are investing to save, and recycling is and has value to cost less, and it will ultimately cost less. It does cost less. So we will be making sure that we are emphasising more on recycling so that actually costs less. And that is the whole ambition and the objective and the vision for Council, to make sure that we can actually do that.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Charles Greaves.
Thank you, Mayor. Feels a bit of a pile on Councillor Ahmed, but so my question is on green bin recycling and contamination rates. So The figures that I have access to are out of date, but obviously you'll have more up-to-date figures than me. But one of the issues that we keep coming to is about this move to recycling. And the elephant in the room is that large parts of this borough, the recycling rates are so poor that it results in absolutely catastrophic levels of contamination, which completely undermines the recycling programme. So let me give you some numbers. Okay, these are out of date. But of 1,500 tonnes of recycling that came in, 322 were designated as contaminated. So across the borough, that's 20% is designated as contaminated. But when we look at issues, at the split between areas, the contamination rate in the south of the borough was 1%. The contamination rate in the north of the borough
Sorry,
was 38%.
Councillor Greaves, it's getting a bit loud in here again. Can we please allow Councillor Greaves to ask his question?
The contamination rate in the north was 38%. The worst round in the north had a contamination rate of 73%. What's the point in putting everything in your green bin if other people are putting contaminants in so that the whole load ends up having to be diverted to being grey? The elephant in the room is that the failure in recycling needs to be tackled. And there's two aspects to that. One is about making it easier to do it by expanding what people can do. So it's not some kind of challenge every time I come to work out which bin can I put it in. I want to put it in green. But quite often I'm left trying to work out if I can. But the other bit with this is the carrot and the stick. Make it easier. 3,000 strike warnings were issued. 14 bins were removed. The council's policy is if you don't use your bin properly, we'll withdraw it. That's the punishment. 14 bins. Meanwhile, this contamination costs a fortune. It undermines what everybody else is trying to do because some folk are just using the green bin like a second grey bin. And you're missing that. And this proposal that's coming forward won't solve that. If anything, it's going to make it even worse. So you're going to spend a load of money swapping the bins over, hoping to save. But if this issue isn't tackled, you're just going to be spending a load of money on the contaminated green bins. Please look into this. My figures are out of date. My question to you is can you come back with the current figures that show that? Because I think it's improved a little bit, but I still think the contamination rate in the north is in the region of a third, and that's too high. If it's 1% in the south and a third in the north, that 33% needs to come down to 1 or 2%. That's where the focus needs to be. That's where the effort is, not in punishing everybody who's already doing it correctly.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. I haven't got all that information at hand with me, and I will get that information to you.
Sorry, Councillor Ahmed. Can we have one meeting in here, please?
I'll get that information to yourself. But one of the most important things I would say to everybody here is about behavioural and attitude change. You're saying that people are doing this. Well, why are they doing it? We all need to work together with the comms team, with the social media, with everything that we've got to make sure that we can actually do that. So we need all the councillors here to actually help in that particular process to try and change people's mindset in terms of behavioural changes. Now, before we had green bins, people had difficulties with that. We've actually moved on to that. It's taken a while. We're there. We need to now move it a step further to make sure that people understand what can go in and what can't, and how we can do that. It's a journey we're on, and I don't think we're quite there yet. But I will provide you with the information that you've requested. So hopefully, we can work together. And like I said, it's a consultation process. We're not going to get it right straight away, but we're working towards that.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Greaves, do you have a supplementary? Okay, thank you. Councillor Sheard, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Ahmed, you'll be glad to know I am giving you a break. This question is to the Leader of the Council. As a local councillor who's experienced firsthand the value that planning committees bring in assessing the benefits and impacts of proposed developments, I am concerned about the government's recent proposal to allow local authority planning officers to approve house developments without scrutiny from planning committees, provided that they comply with local plan and national regulations. The move has been supported by the Housing Secretary, Angela Rayner, aims to streamline the planning process and accelerate house building, but risks reducing local democratic input and the oversight on decisions that affect our communities. Given that planning committees play a crucial role in balancing development with the needs of local people, does the Cabinet support the Government's approach, or will you be presenting on opposition to the Secretary of State on the proposed reforms? Thank you.
Councillor Pattison. Councillor Turner.
The Deputy Prime Minister has talked about that. We need to see what the consultation says, and we need to find a look at the details of what she said. I would not like to see too much watering down of the current system. I believe that the decisions are best left to locals, and I do think that there may be some changes that we've got a government that is committed to devolving power down to the lower levels, and I think this doesn't quite fit in with that, so I'm optimistic that Angie will, in due course, change her opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Sheard, do you have a supplementary? No? Okay. Councillor Burke, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is around air quality to the relevant Cabinet member. In 2019, the Lib Dem group was successful in passing a motion regarding air quality around our schools in Kirklees. I'd like to know what progress has been made, what's been achieved since that motion was passed around the very important issue around air quality, in particular around our schools in Kirklees.
Councillor Addy.
Hi, I'll take that under the public health remit. I don't have that information. It is a very important issue. I'm pleased to hear we have made some progress there. It's not something I'm abreast of all the current figures. Can I get back to you, or even can we sit down and have a chat about it if you like?
Thank you, Councillor Addy. Councillor Burke, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. Yeah, I would welcome a conversation around that. We receive lots of complaints, a lot of issues around the schools. We have in the past had air quality monitoring devices around some of the schools in the Linley ward and some around Kirklees. We've discussed anti-idling campaigns and lots of different initiatives that we can try and use. In particular, we discussed school street schemes. We discussed it and we asked for this in 2020, in particular around Linley Infants, Rainwood Infants and Juniors, Moorlands and Salandine Nook. The school street scheme is a proactive solution with long-term benefits, improving air quality around our schools. It helps improve road safety, health, and reduces congestion. It also changes behaviours. So I would like to discuss that further and look at how we can work together to achieve such positive initiatives around the schools, in particular the ones where we've got concerns and which are near areas of air quality monitoring problems. Thank you.
Councillor Addy.
You had to meet him with me. Yeah, I'm really keen to have that conversation. It's something we should be looking to progress, and it's a great way forward on more counts than just air quality, and not just in one ward, as something that we can look at as a bigger picture. So I'm very keen. It'll be the new year, I'm quite sure, before we actually get to sit down. But it's something to take a long-term look at and really dip into. Do you want to say anything as well, or on the transport side?
Thanks very much. I mean, the School Streets Initiative is something which I think is a really fantastic idea. We ran a pilot in Kirklees. I think that the problem we have is around resourcing, because the health and safety requirements of that require multiple members of staff to be there to make sure that cars don't enter the street. But for those who aren't aware, the School Streets programme is where we close a street around a school to allow children to get to school without having to put up with cars. And it's a perennial problem I've actually just finished being a school governor, which is quite sad, but perennial problem for schools, people parking dangerously, leaving their cars running outside the schools, not paying due attention to the safety aspect of that for children in terms of being hit by cars, but also in terms of air quality. And I'm happy to join in that conversation if it's useful.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Moore, please.
With the closure of Dewsbury Sports Centre confirmed last month, sorry, this is directed to Councillor Turner. The closure of Dewsbury Sports Centre confirmed last month. My question is about the devastating impact this will have on the footfall in Dewsbury Town Centre. The closure of Dewsbury Sports Centre sees the loss of just over 20,000 monthly visits into Dewsbury, now lost forever. This, coupled with the relocation of the Registrar Office to Huddersfield and the removal of Kirklees staff for Empire House, will further compound this impact on footfall. So my question is, how has or will the Dewsbury Blueprint be amended to reflect this chronic loss of footfall in Dewsbury? And what is the Cabinet strategy to try and address / replace this footfall?
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. As I've said before, and you know this, that the evidence we have so far is that the footfall has not gone down in the town centre. We use monitoring data from the underpass, which goes from the baths into the town centre, and that the last figures we received, those figures hadn't gone down. So the underpass is still being used. So we don't believe that there's a direct link with the decrease in footfall with the closure of the town centre. We have many plans for Dewsbury, as you well know. At this moment in time, as we sit here, there's about £30 million worth of investment going into Dewsbury at this very moment, with many more millions to come in future years. So we are investing in Dewsbury. We're going to commit to invest in Dewsbury, and we want to keep back as a thriving town.
Councillor Moore, do you have a supplementary?
Since being elected as a councillor in May 2023, I've seen shops and businesses in Dewsbury Town Centre shutting at an alarming rate. This, coupled with little, if any, enforcement of street drinkers and large groups of men congregating and intimidating people, in particular women. People perceive Dewsbury Town Centre as not being safe, which I think is a fair assessment. We've lost another 3 shops in the last few weeks. Can this Cabinet agree to a multi-agency approach to target visible enforcement on market days, which are Wednesday and Saturday, so we give the public confidence and try and protect the only 2 days where there is some reasonable footfall left in Dewsbury?
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. One of the things with the town board is that the certain amount of the 25% of the money that's supplied by government can be used for revenue. And one of the things the town board is looking at is how that money can be used to improve the safety in the town centre. We're aware that there's a perception of crime in the town centre. The figures don't quite back that up. It doesn't appear to be any worse than anywhere else. But we absolutely accept that there is a perception of it being unsafe to be there. But as I say, the town board is will be working with the police. The senior inspector sits on the town board, and we will be looking at using some of that money in due course to try and improve the safety of Dewsbury Town Centre. Going back to shops closing, I was talking to one of our managers of our largest retail centre in Kirklees only a few weeks ago, and the one thing he was telling me is that these days 38% of all retail is now online. 38%. So 38% of our town shops, by logic, are going to close or are closing. It's a shift in shopping habits. There's nothing we can do about it. What we have to do is reinvent our town centres, and that's what we're doing with Dewsbury by investing in the arcade, investing in the town centre. You've got TransPennine coming through there, and that's what the town centres will be in future. Not places to go spend huge amounts of hours shopping. It's a place where you can go use the town centre park, do some other types of shopping, but the high street as we know it is dead, and we cannot bring that back. We must adapt and we must change.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Taylor, please.
Unfortunately, Councillor Ahmed, I do apologise. But again, it's an important issue. And I think, sort of all members recognise that the one thing people feel as a service that they all receive is a bin and a bin collection. My problem with what you're proposing really is twofold. Firstly, if you want to increase the amount of recycling, it would make sense to do any proposals you have around bins alongside a change to the types of materials that can be recycled through the green bin. And that doesn't appear to be aligned with us at all. So I'd appreciate your comment on that, because I agree, I can't remember who said it across the way, about, you know, sometimes you're there and you're thinking, I really wish I could recycle this, but because of the nature of the item, it's going in the grey bin. So that's one half. And the other half is, ordinarily when we bring forward quite far-reaching proposals, we would use the combined knowledge of this chamber through scrutiny committees and other bodies. Now, I sit on the scrutiny committee that would scrutinise any changes in waste. We've heard nothing about this. Similarly, I sit on the cross-party waste strategy committee. Again, no discussions there. So I do wonder why you aren't taking the opportunity to work with members rather than bring out a proposal that you've seen the impact it's had. And I'm sure every member in this chamber has received contact from at least some residents already about it. It's been ill thought through about how you've launched it. You need to perhaps pare that back a little bit, but I appreciate your comments on that.
Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I'm relatively new into this post, but thank you very much for the honeymoon period. It's gone, hasn't it? It's really gone. I take on board your points in terms of obviously making sure that we can actually bring people's ideas and thoughts together. And whilst it's a proposed budget which is there in terms of doing this, we are taking on board all the comments and the consultations that is taking place. And I think from now until obviously the budget's been finalised, we want to make sure that we get this right. We're not saying that this is the final version of what the proposal is going to be, but we want to take on board all the comments, the views and suggestions that have been put forward here, as well as with the residents and other stakeholders as well. And we'll be doing that in the near future to try and come up with a more viable option which we can work with. But I do need to go back to the fact that we do need to start making a start on recycling. We are not the best performing local authority within the region, and we cannot just keep pushing things back, and we need to make those starts. And that's one of the things, and one of the reasons why this proposal is being put forward, is to start that particular process and then to move it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Unfortunately, that's time. That brings us to the full hour, so we won't be able to hear your supplementary. Okay, we're now going to move on to agenda item 11. Can I just say we did have a really long list of questions, and I'm sure that Cabinet members will agree that if those members who have really got a burning question want to email it across, they can get responses out to you. That won't be a problem, I'm sure. Okay, so agenda item 11 are minutes of other committees, and they are here for information. Okay, agenda item 12, which are questions and comments to chairs of committees, subcommittees, panels and matters within their terms of reference. Any member may ask a question of a chair or a spokesperson, followed by one supplementary. So are there any questions or comments to chairs of committees or panels or nominated spokespersons? Councillor Bolt, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've heard from members this afternoon about the impact of closures of sports centres, the potential impact on health and communities. Could I ask the spokesperson for Kirklees Active Leisure to give us an update on what Kirklees Active Leisure are doing to ensure that all residents can access facilities? And what I've found is it's a ludicrous situation where about 9 o'clock people get alerts on the phone when you've got about 3 minutes to book a session. What's he doing to improve customer confidence?
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. This feels like déjà vu. I've been here before. Councillor Sokol.
Yeah, Madam, Mayor, I can answer something like that. Most of the customers who were displaced due to closure of Dewsbury Sports Centre, they were allocated those places at Bartlett Sports Centre, Community Centre, and the Spen Valley as well. I believe there are 75% of those customers have accepted there to use those centres. So I haven't got a full figure with me. If you, Martin, want full figure, I can get an email.
Thank you, Councillor Sokol. Councillor Bolt, do you have a supplementary?
I don't mind, man. Thank you, Councillor Sokol, for that unexpected reply. Madam Mayor, we seem to be trying to pit a quart into a pint pot. Obviously, in recent years, when I started work at Spen Baths when I left school, it was a 33 1/3 metre pool and we had a lot of people in, but legislation now for a smaller pool means the swimmers need more space, so you get fewer customers in. Closing Dewsbury down means there are therefore more customers being put into the other sports centres, which you can't do. You can't fit all those people in the appropriate time. What are Kirklees Active Leisure doing to ensure that all our customers, and particularly those from areas where they don't have a good bus service and where they've been let down either by the attended service or by mayoral services, by making sure people can get to a sports centre at the time that suits them? How can we make sure that our residents are not being disaffected by the short-sighted action to close Dewsbury Sports Centre?
Madam Mayor, I got some figures on here. The capacity on other centres have been increased, Bartlett Sports and Tennis, yeah, to accommodate those people who have been displaced from there. Bartlett Centre is not too far from the Dewsbury. There is a bus service as well. The customers who have their own transport, they can catch the bus, they go there.
Under Standing Order 18, it appears that the member has misunderstood. I didn't just say people from Dewsbury. I said people from the area. The people from Murfield use Dewsbury Sports Centre. They can't easily get a bus from Murfield to Batley.
Councillor Bolt, you've asked your question. That there is no point of personal explanation. So, no. Councillor Sokol, are you going to finish answering that supplementary?
Yeah, and all those school children, even on there, who have been no facility at Dewsbury Sports Centre, they have been allocated on other call sites like Spen Valley and other, and the capacity over there has been increased to accommodate all those. I can't say anything about the transporter and other things. Yeah, well, there is a bus service anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Sokol. Councillor Muscan, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This question is for the Chair of Health and Wellbeing Board, Councillor Addy. Now, I know this has already been asked twice by two different colleagues, but I'm asking you as the Chair. I just need some clarification as to what's gone on with the calculations with this decision to close the two dementia homes. And I'll be very clear, in September 2023, it was stated that the council would save 1.8 million. In October 2024, it's stated in that report that the council would save 1.25 million, and in this most recent report yesterday it said 800,000. I'm just concerned of how we got here. I'm sure there's a logical reason, but I'm also aware two of my colleagues, one asked yesterday, one asked today.
Sorry, Councillor, the question you're asking, is that for the Health and Wellbeing Board or is that a cabinet question? Because it's...
Well, does it concern the Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board that there's such huge discrepancies from one report to the next? Does the Health and Wellbeing Board Chair have confidence in this decision based on the fact that different figures have been presented in different reports?
Okay, just trying to get clarity really around that question. I think it's just a bit of a grey area. It seems like you're asking the cabinet member, and this is for specifically for chairs of committees, panels, and nominated spokespersons. So, Councillor Addy, I think, has agreed that she will answer that outside of this chamber, because it, as a cabinet member, but not as part of agenda item 12.
Is normally concerned with everything health related across the landscape, and I realise there is a duplication of roles here, but it's a perfectly legitimate question if somebody else was chairing it.
Okay, so Councillor Addy, you've agreed that you will answer that outside of the chamber, but as a cabinet member, because it doesn't fall under agenda item 12. Okay, she will answer that, but outside of the chamber. Thank you. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is for Councillor Homewood on planning. It's more housing planning. Obviously, we talked a lot about housing this evening as well. And one of the things that will help us is the new local plan, as and when that comes through, which is starting to make its way through the process. I'm wondering if he can talk to officers about us in the room here. We've all been asked to provide feedback on the strategic housing need across the district. Really important that we talk about our communities. But when I've checked with officers this week, only 8 members have bothered to respond. So could he perhaps talk to officers as the chair of strategic planning to encourage perhaps some other members, and I'm doing it now to try and embarrass a few people into doing it, to actually contribute, because the more evidence base we've got, the stronger that local plan is, and that's important to all of us. So if you haven't filled it in, you've got to ask yourselves why not. So just a comment, James, if that's all right.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with you. I think they are doing, I mean, I haven't spoken to them specifically about that point, but I noticed as a member myself, I got a reminder and an extension to the timescale to respond. So I think that is happening, but I'll certainly check that. The other thing I'd say is I don't know who has responded, but I know between myself and our ward, we'll probably work together to put in one submission. So, I mean, there might not be 69 submissions. Councillors might work together in their ward to provide a submission together. But yeah, I'll certainly ask that question.
Thank you, Councillor Homewood. Councillor Taylor, do you have a supplementary?
No, Madam Chair. Embarrass members, really.
Thank you. Councillor John Lawson.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a question to the Appeals Panel Chair, Councillor Longstaff. Following the change in policy for Send Transport Post 16, I just wanted to ask a question about the scale of the work that's been involved, that's gone through the Appeals Panel, how difficult that's been, and what his views on that have been.
Sorry. Right. Thanks for the question. Obviously, it's been a change of policy. It's post-16, special education needs, young adults. We've been doing appeals every week for the last few months. I'd like to thank all my colleagues on the panel and all the officers, because there's been a tremendous amount of work being carried out. I believe we've got through the backlog now, and we've done it in the timescales. It's approximately about 38 appeals. We've done it in a timescale, which is good. Just a plea from me, these are very tough cases. All my colleagues have dealt with these know they are tough. So I hope we've done it professionally. We've been an independent panel, and we've also shown some compassion in some of the cases. So far, so good.
Thank you, Councillor Longstaff. Councillor Lawson, do you have a supplementary to that? Do you have a supplementary? No, thank you. Councillor Cooper, please.
My question is to Carol Patterson in her role as on the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. And the question is next time you go into one of these meetings and you see Mayor Brabin, could you ask her that when she comes to see us here, that she allows supplementary questions to us? Because everybody here, when we're asking you questions, gets a supplementary, and we're able to probe deeper into some of the things that you... When Mayor Brabin comes here, we don't have that opportunity. And so when you ask a question and she answers a different question, there's not the opportunity to point that out or try to get her to answer the original question. So it's great to have her here, but it's not all about a showcase for Tracy. It's about us finding out a little bit more about the Combined Authority. So when you see her, if you can ask her to allow supplementaries like every other elected representative here has to do.
Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Cooper. I will be seeing Tracy in the morning, actually. Unfortunately, I see her quite a lot. It's unfortunate because it means I do have to travel across to Leeds. But if our constitution, I can mention it to her, certainly, quite happy to. But if our constitution allows her to, then I'm sure we can arrange or make sure that she does our supplementaries. I'm not sure whether our constitution does, but if it does, then we'll ask her to do so. Thank you. But I'll mention it anyway.
Okay, Councillor Zaman, supplementary, sorry, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Zaman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could we get an update from Councillor Lowe on West Yorkshire Police and the Crime Panel, and in particular the progress on Dewsbury Police Station?
That'll be sent in writing to Councillor Lowe. She's not here tonight, and then you'll get a response. Okay, thank you. Councillor Joshua Shade, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a question to Councillor McLaughlin. A lot of bus stops in Birstall and Birkinshaw no longer provide timetables, only the little QR codes, which I don't even understand how to work. So I don't understand how our elderly population is going to have a clue either. It's not very inclusive, so my question really is, what's the committee doing to make sure that our bus timetables and bus services remain inclusive to all residents? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your question, Josh. If you'd have given me a bit of notice, I might have been able to prepare a more useful answer than the one I'm able to give you now. But I know that the Combined Authority, through the Transport Committee, is spending a lot of money upgrading and refurbishing our bus stops. If memory serves me, I think that may be money that came partially through the BSIP grant from the government over the last few years. I don't know what the policy is on timetables. I know that some of the new stops that I've waited at, because I only use public transport, I do not drive, have the new electronic displays, but not just in shelters. So perhaps it's a temporary arrangement that there aren't paper timetables, which are quite frustrating sometimes because it takes longer to update them. But I will get a more realistic and satisfactory answer to you in short time.
Supplementary?
Yes. Continuing on with bus stops, you've just mentioned that some of the bus stops are going to be going through updates and they are going to be getting improved. In Howden Clough, there are a number of bus stops which are still advertising the 200 bus, which is going to Leeds via Morley. The 200 bus stopped operating in Howden Clough well over a year ago, so do we know how long it's going to take for us to start seeing some updates on bus stops? Thank you.
It's an ongoing programme. It's not like the work hasn't started. The work has started in many parts of the county. I don't know specifically when that bus stop will be done, if at all. I will get back to him. But if you could email me details of where you have concerns, where there is specific information that needs to be removed, please let me know. And I would recommend everybody, please do report problems with bus stops when you see them. I do so frequently, as unfortunately there's a lot of vandalism goes on in bus stops, and whenever I've done so, replies have been forthcoming and repairs have been quick. So please use the reporting tools that are available through the Combined Authority and through the bus companies as well.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Marchington, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to follow up on Councillor Khan's question. I'm a little bit surprised by the response. Councillor Addy's name is on this list as Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board, and whilst it might have been better for Councillor Khan to have asked the particular question she asked in the previous item, we ran out of time. And I think it's perfectly legitimate for Councillor Khan to ask that particular question under the remit of Councillor Addy being Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board. Now, Councillor Addy might prefer to give an answer outside this meeting, a written answer. It would have been procedurally better if the Cabinet member had stood up and said that, rather than doing that. If we can't direct questions to the Cabinet member for Health and Wellbeing or the Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board, stuff that is clearly within it's a partnership. You know, provision of care homes within Kirklees is definitely, a partnership issue. So I'm a bit surprised about that. So it would be nice if Councillor Addy is not in position to give an answer at the moment. It would be really good if the Cabinet member could stand up and say that to us, and then provide Councillor Khan and the rest of us with a written answer. Thank you.
Councillor Addy.
So we've had, holding the executive to account, a time to ask that question. I did realise that I didn't answer the figures in yours, and I was going to come over and answer that afterwards, because there was quite a lot wrapped up in that, and so I gave you the big picture. If people are going to use it as a chance to come in by stealth, and there's a lot of things that happen in the Health and Wellbeing Board, come and have a look at what we do and where we're going with that strategic partnership, which isn't a council committee. It's a big thing, it's important. Now, I'm not going to do this again if people bring questions in under a different remit, because as the Health and Wellbeing Board Chair, it's not my place to be looking at the funding of the care homes and the sale. However, we have got different figures, and as I was going to save me doing it 3 times, I was quite happy to have a chat about it. The original figures, I believe, used a lot of indirect costs, and those are hard to calculate and figure only in the council's business. So these are just the direct costs of these care homes. The figure we have now are the direct costs completely housed in. These care homes cost us a lot more than that. There is a lot more going on that we will benefit from as a council, but it's hard to pin down in little pieces here and there. Even a meeting such as this is discussing that it is coming into that remit. So that is where the disparity was, but it's been decided that it's clearer to stick to the direct costs and pin it right down to that. So I do apologise for not including it to start with. I was just going to come out and chat to you, but, it's not a Health and Wellbeing Board Chair question.
Thank you, Councillor Addy. Councillor Marchington, do you have a supplementary? Okay, thank you. Councillor Viv Kendrick, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question for the Chair of the Health and Adult Social Care Scrutiny Panel, Councillor Lawson. I'm really interested to know if the Dementia Care Homes report went to Health and Adult Social Care Scrutiny Panel.
Thank you. Yes, it actually did. We also received regular briefings on it, an informal briefing, and I, as chair of the actual committee, received briefings on it. To answer Councillor Khan's question, if I may.
It's within the remit.
If that's okay.
Sorry, what was that, Councillor Lawson?
It was to actually answer the question that Councillor Khan raised. can I actually answer? Is obviously I've answered Councillor Kendrick's question, and Councillor Khan actually asked a question that I would actually like to answer as well.
Okay, so under which capacity would you be answering that question?
As the chair of the Adult Health and as Health and Adult Social Care.
Right.
No, she can answer the question, not somebody else's question.
Yeah, because that question was intended for the health and wellbeing, not your portfolio.
Fine.
That's okay.
That's why I clarified it before starting.
No, thank you. No, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Supplementary, Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you. Thank you for that. It's good to know that you've it's been to scrutiny panel and you've had regular updates. I'm interested to know what the view of the scrutiny panel was about the report on the dementia care homes, please.
The initial report that we actually had was in September 2023. And that was when it was actually going to be up for sale. We've had a briefing on the thing there, and I've actually looked at sort of various things. Obviously, from an NHS nurse point of view, I'm always very concerned about private providers. I raise questions around the fact that there seems to be a lot about the CQC, and we've got good quality care homes within Kirklees. Having looked through CQC reports, I tend to disagree. Actually, having had the CQC come to one of our scrutiny panels, I think Councillor Addy will agree that they left us with more questions than actual answers, and will be returning back to us.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor McGrath, please.
I know it's been a while since I last stood up about this, but to Councillor Cooper, as chair of the Scrutiny Panel for Environment and Climate Change, will you at the earliest possible opportunity speak with council officers and Councillor Ahmed to bring the Grey Bin proposal back in front of your scrutiny panel? Thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Yes, I would anticipate that this is a pre-decision scrutiny matter that we would like to explore. I'd be interested to know how the existing grey bins are going to be recycled. That seems to be the first recycling job with this policy. So that will be an area that we will explore, we'll see. I think look more broadly at recycling because there are some very successful local authorities that have got much more community recycling sites, and that's the way that they achieve higher recycling targets, not necessarily making the bins as small as possible.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor McGrath?
It'd be a shame to waste it. As we're obviously talking about recycling, would you agree with me that the best way to recycle a bin would be to use it as a bin, maybe for additional types of recycling?
Councillor Cooper.
So, the best, better than recycling is reuse. You always reuse before you recycle, so just keep reusing that old grey bin.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Bramwell.
My question is to the Chair of the West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Authority. Just for context, don't know if you're aware of this, but during the Halloween period, Mischievous Night, Bonfire Night and so on, we saw an increase in crime and incidents, especially with young people, surrounding fire and fireworks, and I've got no doubt that we will see that again in the new year. So my question is, what is the committee doing to prioritise educating young people on fireworks and fire safety?
Thank you. Councillor Darren O'Donovan, please.
Thank you for that question. Do you want to answer this, Councillor Ahmed, maybe? Is that more appropriate this evening? No, we'll give it a try. It's a really interesting question because every kind of Halloween to bonfire night period, we do see a rise in certain parts of West Yorkshire. We get hotspots of mischievous firework use, and we get a rise in attacks on firefighters. And we don't want to see either of those. Going back many, many years, we do targeted work in the areas working with partners where we anticipate and where we have evidence of previous kind of disturbances. So across every 5 districts of West Yorkshire, we do proactive work to prioritise the hotspots that we believe are going to happen with joint working with the police and fire. Some of the main hotspots across West Yorkshire are in Leeds and Bradford. So the police and West Yorkshire Fire do dedicate a good number of resources in those districts. We have 14 or 15 different youth intervention projects that West Yorkshire Fire run through the year for various ages, some school age, some outside of school age. And there are a number of programmes that schools can opt into if schools feel like they have a group of young people who have, what they would call kind of characteristics of ASB or a history of ASB, where they want to do some proactive work to get people to understand safe use of fire, safe use of fireworks, and fire safety, and those really, really good projects. I was in Wakefield recently looking at one such project, and it just happened to be Westborough High School children that were at that session at Wakefield Station. So yes, West Yorkshire Fire do a number of targeted interventions over Bonfire Weekend. This Bonfire Weekend just gone happens to be one of the more quieter ones across West Yorkshire when you look at data going back, which is good. It doesn't take away the fact that there has been some hotspots of ASB in that period, but I think we're all glad to see a reduction, which is testament to community workers, schools, fire, police and other partners as well.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donovan. Councillor Bramwell, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you for your response, Councillor O'Donovan. So it's great to hear that there's a lot of work that is being done, but it's clearly not enough. And although you state that it's been a lot quieter this year, I don't believe that's true with the casework that I've had to handle and the emergency meetings that I've been called to with West Yorkshire Police and other services involved. So, evidencing that more can be done, will you commit to doing more in engaging with young people and the correct services, including the youth detached service within the council and grassroots organisations? Will you commit to that today and prioritise that before the new year and something to put in place following next year?
Councillor O'Donovan, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we already do, and I must say it's important to recognise the fact that we can't predict the future, but the new year period, statistically speaking, has never between fire and police raised its head as a major fire risk or firework risk period for young people. Again, that's not to say there might be pockets where that happens, but when you're looking at the picture across West Yorkshire, and it's right to make sure that the public are aware of accurate information, that the fire risk in the new year is not anywhere near comparable to the fire risk of bonfire night. But in my role, I will absolutely continue working with district commanders who work within our districts to make sure we're doing the best we can to engage with young people.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donovan. Councillor Richard Smith, this will be the last question because we are on 29 minutes. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I might need a bit of guidance on this. I was trying to ask a question about the fostering panel. I was going to ask Councillor Sewell, is it? Sorry if I got your name wrong, but that's One Adoption Joint Committee. Is it possible to ask a question of someone regarding the adoption panel? Because that is an external body. I'm not sure who asked the question to.
What I'm going to suggest is you ask the question. We probably haven't got time for an answer,
right,
but we can get an answer out to you
okay,
writing from the relevant person.
Okay, so I'll be quick. It's about the fostering panel and the representatives that attend the fostering panel, specifically from my group, if I'm honest, but it will apply to other groups. Now, there does seem to be a small number of people who are called on to attend the fostering panel. And what that results in, anecdotally at least to me, is that there are often times when a small number of people, two in my case, are not able to attend fostering panels that are called at fairly short notice. And I was wondering whether there was any way we could talk about, in some forum or other, I'm not sure which the forum is, whether we could have more people on the fostering panel from each group so that these panels were more, easy to staff. So I hope we can have that discussion at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. That is time. We'll make sure that we get the question to the relevant person and get a response for you. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 13, which is the motion on changes to the winter fuel allowance. So with this motion, we do have two amendments. So we're going to take this on as a block. So we're going to hear the original motion first, and then straight after we're going to hear the amendments, and then we're going to debate it as a whole before we come to voting on it. Is everybody happy with that? Yep. Okay. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, fellow councillors, I'm very pleased to be able to propose the motion before you this evening as a matter of real concern that affects the well-being of our elderly residents here in Kirklees. I'm sure you'll have seen the recent report in The Guardian that show that already 1 million pensioners are skipping meals, and upwards of 7 million are keeping their heating off despite the cold weather due to financial concerns. All because of the recent government decision by Rachel Reeves to restrict winter fuel payments to only those pensioners receiving pension credit or other means-tested benefits. Historically, winter fuel payments have been a lifeline for our senior citizens, providing essential support to help them stay warm during the harsh winter months. While this universal benefit acknowledges the increased vulnerability of all our older individuals to cold weather, irrespective of their income levels, I do accept that there should be a cut-off, and that we don't necessarily need to be providing this funding for the Lord Sugars of this world, and I apologise to Lord Sugar for using him as an example. But it ought to be available nearer to medium incomes rather than the level at which the cut-off is currently. The recent policy change has narrowed eligibility, excluding approximately 10 million pensioners nationwide from receiving this support. In Kirklees, where over 67,000 residents are aged over 65, constituting 1 in 6 of the population, this policy shift is particularly alarming. By 2030, it's projected that 1 in 5 of our residents will be over 65, and the over 85 population by then is due to have risen by 78%, and the majority of these people will not receive support. Many of these individuals live on fixed income, just above the threshold for the means-tested benefits, yet still struggle to meet the rising costs of living. The removal of their winter fuel payment places them at increased risk of fuel poverty, potentially leading to severe health consequences. The government's rationale for this policy is to target resources more effectively. However, this approach overlooks the reality that many pensioners who do not qualify for the means-tested benefits still face significant financial challenges. The Social Security Advisory Committee has criticised the policy as rushed and ill-conceived, warning that it could lead to increased hospital admissions among the elderly during winter, at a time when hospitals are already stretched. The Chancellor rushed ahead with this shameful cut for our most vulnerable residents without doing any due diligence, without considering the wider impact of the change, without undertaking any consultations with interested parties like Age UK and others who support elderly residents. As Kirklees councillors, we have a duty to stand up for all our residents, especially the most vulnerable. It is our responsibility to ensure that no elderly person in our community is left to choose between heating their home and other essential needs. Therefore, I urge this Council to support this motion, calling on the Government to reconsider and reverse the policy. Let us stand together to protect our pensioners and ensure they receive the support that they need to live in warmth and dignity. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Is that seconded?
Seconded, reserve the right, Madam Mayor.
No. Councillor Ali, you'd pressed. Didn't get a chance, Martin. Councillor Ali.
Right. Thank you, Madam Mayor, elected members, ladies and gentlemen. Martin. Heating is a necessity, and access to a warm home is a basic right, not a luxury. But for many, as we approach the festive seasons and the cold nights draw in, having a warm room to sit in and maybe watch a Christmas movie has become a luxury that they cannot afford. This is a reality that's facing 10 million pensioners in England and Wales who are set to lose their winter fuel allowance. 63,000 of these are our residents in Kirklees. That's a staggering amount. 88% of Kirklees pensioners who were eligible to the allowance will be affected by the cuts. It's our responsibilities, as Councillor Taylor has highlighted, it's our responsibility as their elected representatives to speak up on their behalf against the cruel and unfair decisions that this government has made. Just 3 months prior to the general election, the Prime Minister himself was highlighting the plight of the pensioners in none other than our constituency of Dewsbury. Members of his cabinet were making idle promises to pensioners to protect them, protect the elderly, to ensure that they have access to healthcare, the NHS, to cut their waiting list, to improve their health. But I'm appalled to see that within months of coming into government, the first group to be targeted by the PM and his team are those very individuals, the most vulnerable, the elderly, the fragile, and the ones with health issues and often disabilities. Is this just because they're an easy target? Or maybe the cynical in me thinks that that he has little regard for those that have served our country, worked hard for their whole lives. Does he think that they matter less as a group because many of them won't be around at the next general election to vote for him? And maybe he can even speed that up by cutting the fuel allowance, because the cold kills. I'm not being an alarmist or exaggerating. Cold, damp homes exacerbate ongoing health conditions, particularly in the elderly, and lead to higher mortality. Coming from an NHS background, I see the increase in illnesses, especially chest infections and pneumonia. This is backed by NHS data. It suggests that 250,000 more people will be forced on the doors of the NHS due to the increased cold conditions. I don't agree with the government that they are forced to make these tough decisions, and by swapping the £300 fuel allowance, they are saving 1.5 billion, because this saving is simply going back and to be put into them meeting the inflated wage demands of the 10 billion increased inflated wage demands of the public sector unions. The 1.5 billion proposed saving will simply be pumped back into meeting these inflated wage increases. What does it actually mean for the residents of Kirklees? Well, look at the figures. Nationally, 10 million people will be stripped of the payment, and estimates released by Department of Works and Pensions under the Freedom of Information Act actually suggest that 780,000 pensioners in the UK and Wales are set to lose their winter fuel allowance because they are expected to not apply for benefits that they're entitled to. By the government's own analysis, 9 out of 10 pensioners aged 67 to 79 would lose out. 8 out of 10 of those that are over 80 would also lose theirs.
30 seconds, Councillor Ali.
30 seconds. So, to summarise very quickly, I feel that it is unfair on those on low incomes, often those that continue to work into their 60s and 70s, and in some cases, those that miss out because they are working, because they're just pounds over the threshold. So I put it to you, councillors, to support this motion and to ensure that no pensioner in Kirklees has to make that difficult decision to heat or to eat. As I said in my opening statement, heating is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Okay, I'm now going to move on to the amendments. So the first one is from Councillor Jo Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I resigned from the Labour Party in February, one of the many reasons was because that I did not believe that a Labour government would make a significant difference to the lives of millions. Well, I got that wrong, didn't I? Millions of our elders will be affected by this absolutely obscene measure taken by this Labour government. Labour has condemned millions of pensioners struggling as it is to survive on one of the lowest state pensions in Europe to a winter of misery, another winter where the choice will be heating or eating. And this is a Labour government. What's up next? Rachel Thieves is going to do a Christmas Eve announcement and take away the triple lock. Yes, the last Tory government wrecked the economy, but surely Starmer and Reeves can see that making some of our most vulnerable people in society pay for the mistakes of the Tories is nothing but obscene. How anybody can think that a single pensioner struggling on circa £12,000 a year doesn't deserve a helping hand is beyond me and many others. Why should our elders pay the price? It wasn't them that wrecked the economy. Is Starmer now in the pay of big business and dare not upset his many donors because his wife wants a Prada handbag for Christmas? Mrs B in my ward would like to be warm for Christmas, as would millions of other pensioners that Starmer and Reeves have condemned to another miserable winter. Is it not time for Starmer, whose favourability ratings tanked in his first 30 days, first 100 days of being Prime Minister? It was actually lower than Theresa May. It is thought that over 37% of pensioners who are entitled to claim pension credit don't. It's also very pleasing to see that teams within Kirklees have been highlighting this to our elders, but I cannot help but be a bit cynical when the Labour group amendment tonight appears to big up pension credit. Most of our elders who have a full state pension and a small additional income will not be able to claim it. They only need to be a couple of pounds over. Energy companies, while many of our elders and vulnerable members of society were freezing last winter, made record profits. British Gas in July reported profits of 159 million for the first 6 months of 2024. Utility companies have posted combined profits of 240 billion since 2020. Consumers have seen their bills skyrocket in this period and disproportionately hit the lower income households the most. Is it now not time to look at a wealth tax on utility companies, a social tariff for low income households, and dare I say it, let's nationalise the utility companies? Shame on Starmer and shame on any Labour MP who voted for this disgraceful removal of support for our elders. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Is that seconded? Councillor Cahoot.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, I rise to second this motion which addresses an urgent issue affecting our most vulnerable citizens, our elders. And I do this not just in my role as a councillor, but as like many of you here, as a son or a daughter who's lost both his parents, his in-laws, his elderly uncles who passed away. Remember, our elders are a blessing, they're not a burden. They brought light when they visited my home and were like an umbrella shielding me when I visited them. They, like most elders, worked hard all their lives for their children, grandchildren, and the community. Now, when they need the support the most, it is wrong to neglect them or to make cutbacks such as this. We must remember that this is the natural cycle of life. If we care for our elders now, there's more chance by setting a good example, future generations will follow and care for us in turn. We are tomorrow's pensioners, so we must ask, how would we feel? Also, bear in mind, what comes to mind is an old folk story of a man who lived with his elderly father down south somewhere near London, a village. And he found it difficult to maintain his father and cope with life's difficulties. His father was 90 and still not passing away, and caring for him was difficult. So one day, evil thoughts entered his head, and he took his father on his back and headed out of the village to go and leave him in the wilderness to pant for himself. And as he crossed a river, his father began laughing. And he says, "Dad, what are you laughing at?" He says, "I'm laughing because years ago, I too took my father like this across the river." So the moral is clear. Our elders deserve care, respect, and stability, not to be forced into choosing between staying warm or eating. Food banks such as the one we've just recently opened at Batley Al Hashim Academy should be for the young, poor, and homeless, not for pensioners who have contributed so much to society. The changes to the winter fuel allowance will disproportionately affect those who need the help the most. I fully support this motion and urge the government to reconsider its position, ensuring that pensioners are given the dignity and comfort they deserve. You're putting money over the welfare of our elders. Would you do that for your own parents? Please find the money from elsewhere. Make cuts elsewhere. And whilst I'm on my feet, I will just ask, can they stop scraping the bottom of the barrel with these cuts, pushing an asset transfer rather than spending the funds to save or move a library? And finally, from my experience, it is easy to switch banks. The bank take care of all the standing orders, and direct debit is a seamless exercise. Thank you. I fully ask you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cahoot. Councillor Pattison, can we... Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I rise to speak to the Labour Party amendment. So, I'm still laughing at that last comment. Of course, we have sympathy with pensioners who are in poverty. And of course, we have sympathy with anybody in poverty, and particularly, I have to say, the 30% of children that are living in poverty. It's far too simplistic to just look at this removal of the winter fuel payment to two-people households who will be receiving £150 each. It's far too simplistic to see that as, and just to rail against that, as if that is something, just because that's something that's being taken away, and rather not look at what should be put in place instead. We would much rather see that pensioners and children, but pensioners are properly supported by their pensions. That it would be far better to have a universal pension scheme that did take into account a person's full circumstances and did give them a reasonable standard of living so they are not worried about heating and eating. There were far too many people who were receiving the winter fuel payment who did not need it, who were using it to buy Christmas presents, or who were using it for whatever reason, but not to provide the fuel that it was intended for. A universal benefit is never well targeted. It's not targeted to those who need it, and nor is it targeted to what it is actually meant to be spent on. So, and overall, pensioners, because the Labour Party has chosen to, which the Tory government did not, we have chosen to keep the triple lock. Pensioners are actually going to receive more as a result of that keeping the triple lock than they would have done in the winter fuel payment. So it's a redistribution of wealth from those who are better off, those who don't need it even, to those who do. And we need to see it as being not just being put into raising levels of child poverty, but also, I mean, there was this £22 billion pound black hole in the government finances, which this money has helped to raise to fill that hole. And where is it going? Most of it is going into local government services.
To finish, please.
It's going into local government services, and guess what? Where does 50% of our budget go? It goes to supporting the elderly and those most vulnerable. So it's absolutely most important that the government does use its the funds that is available to it to target those most in need, and not universally where it's not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Is that seconded? Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to second this motion. And can I just say I absolutely want all of our vulnerable older people to be safe and comfortable and secure in their homes and able to heat and eat without having to worry about that. I think it's worth noting that this government has maintained the triple lock, and thanks to this policy to increase basic pension instead of relying on token one-off payments, I believe that increasing the basic pension, which has been mentioned by other members tonight, is one of the lowest in Europe after 14 years of Conservative government, to ensure that all pensioners can afford to heat and eat, is a better policy over time. And I think if we can look forward to 14 years of Labour government, we will see the pension reflected after that period of time through their policy changes. So pensions will increase this year well ahead of inflation by 8.5% because of that protection of the triple lock that I believe the previous government did try to remove, a rise of £691 for a pensioner, which is far more than the £200 individual winter fuel allowance or the £300 couples allowance. So I support this motion and second it.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Okay, I'm just looking at the time. Yeah. Right, okay, that's fine. Right, we're going to have a debate on the whole thing now. So, Councillor Will Simpson, please.
Given the time. Can I raise Council Procedure Rule 16.4 and move to a vote?
Is that second?
I don't think we've got time. We just need to vote on the two amendments in the motion.
Is that seconded? Councillor Smith. So Councillor Taylor's moved that we go straight to the vote, given the time, and Councillor Smith has seconded that. So we're going to vote on the proposal that's come from Councillor Taylor on whether we should go straight to voting on the motion and the amendments that are in front of us. Okay, please use your consoles. If you just wait, it'll start flashing ITs onto it. Just bear with it. Just bear with it. It should come up. I think IT, yeah. It's just said, just wait a minute. IT, can we just have that on the screen, please? I can see it on here, but I can't see it on this. You don't know what's happened? Right, okay, I'll just...
Just vote.
You can just vote and I'll give you the figures.
It'll be recorded.
Yeah, it's all recorded. It is being recorded. It's just not appearing on... Oh, there we go.
It's still the same.
Yeah, it's still the same. Right, okay, so that's carried. Sorry, so that's carried. We are going to begin with voting on the first amendment, which was proposed and seconded by Councillor Lawson and Councillor Cahoot. We're going to use our consoles again, please. There, it's working. Okay. That's everyone. That falls. We are now going to vote for the second amendment, which was proposed by Councillor Pattison and seconded by Councillor Crook. Okay, that also falls. We are now going to vote on the substantive motion. Just give it a minute. That'll be carried.
Last minute change then. It's went 30-10.
30.
Right, at 9 o'clock, we're good to go.
Okay. So that is carried. It is 9 p.m. on my watch. I am now going to close this meeting. Can I also just take this opportunity to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. See you all next year.